Dovid Bashevkin.
Yes.
Those of you may or may not know some of my work and what I do, but I work with a lot of Jewish organizations, and Jews love talking about Jewish values.
And I'm here for you.
Me? Wow.
I think you represent a really important audience. Disaffected yeshiva. I know you're trying to go bigger than that.
What does disaffected mean?
David has been able to really create an entire new set of conversations around issues that people do not typically talk about.
I see you get like unprocessed, almost like tension.
What is 1840? What is the goal?
1840's target demographic are people who are living lives that are no longer mediated by institutions.
Dovid Bashevkin connects with everybody.
Sounds like you're still asking for the rule book.
No, I'm not asking for a fucking rule book.
You're kind of the Stephen A. Smith of Jewish podcasting. Before you absolutely obliterate and rip on someone, like, I want you to know, me and LeBron, our kids bathe together, we are best friends. Like,
When I think about the future, when I think about the holy of holies of the work that we're doing, it's building that future.
What it means to make it is so deeply personal to you. It doesn't exist until you actually get there.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Mislabeled. I don't even know what episode we're on. I know we had a little bit of a lag. There's been a lot of changes here at Mislabeled, as I'm sure all of you guys know at this point. Moving forward, for the time being, it is myself and Dovi that are going to be running this thing. It is a big restructure, and I understand that it's going to take a little bit of time till we pick up the flow, because Dovi's been here for a total of 3 weeks. Though I do love him already in 3 weeks. I already feel like we're rolling already.
Yeah, I mean, you took me out to bistro, so like that's the key to my heart.
Told me, by the way, you've never been to a steakhouse in your life.
I said I went to one steakhouse before in high school. Yes,
that's-
I don't frequent steakhouses.
That's unbelievable. Even I figured out a way to get to a
Well,
steakhouse.
it's part and parcel of my like who I am, that I like on stage. I promote this like poor rabbi's kid. So if I'm like going to steakhouses, it doesn't work.
I get it, but I also went to I was also a rabbi's kid, and I was poor, and I went to steakhouses somewhere. or
You're
another.
on the other end of like the other arc of your story. Yet I'm still on this part of my arc.
It's funny because you're bringing up a funny story. We're gonna get to our guest in 1 second, but there's a funny ass story. When I was like 14, 15, there was this store. There's a steakhouse in Queens, really the only steakhouse in Queens. And there's nothing going on in Queens, so this is like the only thing Queens has to offer. But there's a place called Hapiska, which most people a lot of people I'm sure know about. And
Just so you know, people outside of Queens don't call that a steakhouse. But yeah, go on.
okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I can understand why someone would say that. but specifically, Hapiska, when I was like 14 or 15, I was in Chavetz Chaim, Queens high school, and I was always starving just because, again, you're a rabbi's kid, you're starving, and also Queens doesn't exactly have good food. The yeshiva, like you're in a yeshiva. So I used to go to Hapiska, and they had the games on. There was like a big factor. They had a TV there, and it was very hard to access.
You grew up without a TV?
I grew up without a TV, and not only that, none of my grandparents on either side had TVs. So it wasn't even like I could go watch a football, basketball, or sports game.
No, like fry uncle, nothing?
I had zero way of watching a sports game. Like, until I was 15, I don't think I ever watched a game on a television. Like, it was just impossible. And all my friends, anyways, long story short, I couldn't afford the steaks and like the main course, obviously, or even the appetizers. So I'd walk in there and they would give you pizzas and like the dips, and they'd give you that to start the meal. So I'd sit down, they give me that, I'd eat that, then I would go straight to dessert. They had the greatest...
Just to watch the game?
No, I was just hungry. So I knocked back 3 pizzas, I'd ask them for more. They start with 2, give me another 2. And then I would go straight to dessert. Like the waiter would come over to me and be like, all right, what would you like for your appetizer? Nothing. What would you like for your main? Nothing. What do you want? And I'm like, I'll take the chocolate souffle. The guy's like, what? You're going straight? I'm like, straight to dessert, buddy. And then I'd pay $14.99 and bounce. So yeah, that was the experience. Anyways, getting back to it, before we get to our guest, one last thing. I do want to give a huge shout out and a huge thank you to Zach. I obviously explained briefly on social why, for the long-term trajectory, I didn't see it as a fit long-term. But with that being said, Zach is incredible, super talented. And I just want to thank him. He was very, very committed to the pod. He was very focused. And I don't believe we'd be here without him. That's the truth. Like he ultimately, at the end of the day, when it was me and Shmuley, we started the pod and it just wasn't happening. Zach came on as a guest. I don't even know if people know this. The second Zach came on as a guest, I called him the next morning. Well, I went to Shmuley right after the pod. I'm like, this is our guy. Like, this is the way we're going to take it to the next level. I called him the next morning. I said I wanted to join as a co-host, and I didn't even know him. And he said, sure, no problem, I'm in. So, and since after that, he was consistent. There were a lot of times Shmuley couldn't make it, for example, because Shmuley had work 9 to 5. Zach had more flexibility, and the pod took off after that. So
I haven't been introduced yet, but I can just say.
I'm sorry.
the
I know,
little
I feel bad that I
The little
just-
clips that I've seen, I love Zach. He's extraordinarily lovable and was a very good foil to your deeply unlovableness on the clips that you share.
I definitely
It's part of the brand. It's
Yes,
beautiful.
correct.
But he had a sweetness, and I was very disappointed that I wouldn't get to speak with him tonight. I love him. Love to you, Zach, for real.
I can assure you, I would hope, as I told him, that he's going to start his own thing, and by all means, you should jump on there.
I could sense his sweetness. He has a soft heart. I can see it.
Yeah.
We should probably get into our guest being
Yes.
here just to introduce himself. He has a little bit of a like center of attention deficit syndrome. I don't know if you're.
That's not fair. I don't think that's true.
I think it's true.
I was waiting
it takes
so
one to-
patiently and silently.
Yeah, I know, but
I wasn't
it was
sure if I'm supposed to.
It was
jump
hard
in
for
or
you to
not.
sit at a table so long for.
No, not at all.
Okay, so hold on a second. I want to actually give a little bit of a formal introduction, but yeah, Dovid Bashevkin.
Yes,
You go by Dovid or David?
David. If you can pronounce David 10 out of 10 times, go
Awkward
with
Bucker
David.
calls him David.
Oh, we're about
I switched to David because I'm sometimes in communities where you either pronounce it as David or David, and that drives me crazy. I don't want to feel like I'm in my 5th grade social studies class.
Right.
I want to be called David. So I went and I publish under David because I'm reaching people who can't pronounce David properly. They call me David, which drives me nuts.
Got it.
But you guys look like the kind of people who can execute 10 out of 10 on the David track.
My name is Laibel, so yeah,
Yeah,
I can pull this one off.
You got this.
Yeah, I got this. No, I just saw on your Twitter handle it says David /
David /
So I
David.
just wasn't sure what you go by. Good stuff. I know you guys are very close, right?
We go very back. He's watched my evolution. I've actually watched his evolution. He doesn't remember as much. But
I feel deeply. I don't think I would be here if Dovi hadn't joined because I feel such a connection to not only him but his entire family.
I know you didn't respond to my emails.
That's not true. I responded to one.
You were 1 for 20.
I'm here for 2 reasons. I'm here for 2 reasons. Number one, I love Dovi. I'm crazy about him. I was roommates with his brother Rav Mati in the White Shul. I was chavrusas and still very in touch with his brother-in-law Aryeh Westreich. And I'm here for you. Why am I here for you? Number one,
Me, wow.
I think you represent a really important audience. Disaffected yeshiva. I know you're trying to go bigger than that. I'm sure in a lot of ways, and you are much bigger than that.
What does disaffected mean?
Disaffected yeshiva. Somebody who the
we're getting into
yeshiva
it right
system
away.
did not work out for. It didn't work. Let's get back to that.
Yeah, sure.
Let's get back.
No,
to
by
that. I'm
all
here for
means.
another reason.
I love when people-
brought
yeah, go
I
ahead.
brought a prop. You know exactly what the prop is that I brought. It's a picture that I was very moved by, but I'm crazy about family connections.
All right.
This is a picture that you should. Do you know?
give
what
the
this-
camera a
What's this
show.
a picture of? Do you know what this is?
I know that my great grandfather's in there because in the one email you responded to me on, and by the way, it wasn't 2, it was 1. You wrote.
is that Charlie Chaplin in that picture?
You wrote to me in that email that your grandfather was close to my great grandfather.
Yes, this is the first graduating class of Yeshivas Chafetz Chaim.
Really now?
Yes. My grandfather was in Torah Vodas and studying under Mr. Mendelovich.
Right, of course.
And his other Rebbe was Rav David Leibowitz. And Rav David went to start his own yeshiva that he was going to call
Goyim
after
are
his,
gonna love this podcast.
he was going to call after his great uncle, the Chafetz Chaim,
Right.
Rav Yisrael Meir Kagan. The mashkiach in that yeshiva was your great grandfather, Rav Scheinberg. This was in the mustache years, before the tzitzis years. And my grandfather, who they were close, your great grandfather of Scheinberg called my grandfather Butch because my grandfather's the front and center, the tall person over here. What I loved about this and what I'd love to bring back is let's bring back tuxedos to rabbinic ordination ceremonies. We got to bring back
love it.
tuxedos.
Speaking of, can we?
Sorry.
This
on
is
that.
classy, but I felt a real familial connection. I remember my grandfather introducing me to your great grandfather, and I felt like a little bit of mishpachti, like a real family connection to that.
Speaking of the fiqh, we talk a little bit about like the Captain Douchebag outfit that you
Is that what you call it? That's very hurtful to me.
It's so funny you're saying that because when I walked in, I've never met you, I've never seen you in
Yeah,
my life.
sure.
This is my first time. I actually love your getup. I think you are looking very classy.
I think the scarf is just like it's very like cash advance, like first money, like just went to Hermes and like bought whatever they
I get
saw.
paid $1,000 by Tuileries every time I wear the scarf. So.
You really?
No, he's full of shit. I'm assure you he's full of shit. No, but I don't think that's cash advance. No, I disagree with your take.
No,
on
this is
totally. He's
if
not wearing
you-
any brand names.
If
that
you
are in your
look
face.
at my closet are all white shirts, either with.
So what's the utility of the scarf? It's just like a.
Honestly, somebody called me out on this. They said, "I know what look you're going for," and
It's a vibe.
he sent me a clip of Good Will Hunting. He said, "You are going for the math professor Good Will Hunting when he's sitting next to Will and they're doing math equations. He's got that scarf draped over his thing," and I'm like,
That doesn't look like what
guilty
you're
as
going for. It looks
charged.
more like
guilty
a
as charged.
James
He was
Bond,
right. I think Daniel Stokar is the one who reached out to me and said, "You're going for Good Will Hunting, the math professor." And yeah,
you know what's interesting? I don't agree with you.
but
on
it's
this.
clean. It's neat. I don't like. I just don't.
Yeah,
I don't
not
ever
every
think
item
about
of
these
clothing
things.
that you wear has to serve a purpose. For example,
Oh, definitely not, because that scarf is not serving any purpose.
yeah, no, but people wear like beanies and stuff like that. What? There's no purpose.
To dress up. Otherwise, I'm all black. I'm all dark. I'm not wearing a tie to this.
All right, this is you're holding on to your gray jean stage.
No, I'm
we'll get
leaning.
into.
I'm leaning into my. He's an educator. He's a rabbi, but it's like a little different.
This is your relatability.
twist.
He's a cool rabbi.
I'm a cool mom. I'm a cool mom.
Got it.
Yeah.
Wait one second. Where were we up to?
We were just about. I was telling you why I came
So
on
I
here.
was going to say that many people don't have this random fact is that many people happen not to know about my great grandfather. That it's just funny you mentioned it. And after this, we are going to stop talking about Chavetz Chaim and super yeshivas and history from 70 years ago. But he was the mashgiach in Chavetz Chaim for how many years?
Oh, I don't know that.
That's a good question. What do you? Do you know what yeshiva he's most known for?
Yeah, in Telstone.
Not Telstone, but Mattersdorf.
Mattersdorf.
So right, that is Torah.
Torah,
And I
yeah.
went there
Sure.
for 1 year. Okay.
We're related in some way also. There's a Scheinberg who married a cousin of mine, but I don't know
Okay,
who.
fine, but I'm related to everyone. So that's
Yeah.
like Moshe Rabbeinu was also our.
Beautiful.
It's
That's a
the same
beautiful
idea.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, he was a mashgiach there for 25 years.
In Chavetz Chaim.
Yes,
I didn't know it was that long.
No,
I would have
correct.
guessed like 4 years, and
exactly.
then he
So no one knows that. It's like one
and
of
then
the.
he left.
Yeah, major fire. Moshe was the Dayan.
He got into a fight with Rav Dovid.
Rav Henoch. Not
Oh, he
a
got
fight, but it was like yeah. It was,
Who's taking the mantle? Rav Henoch was very young when Rav Dovid died.
Well, it was clear that Rav Henoch was going to take the mantle. That was clear. But later on, again, this is 25 years down the line.
Gotcha.
And the yeshiva, I guess, was more established. Rav Steinberg was more of a not a Chavetz Chaim guy. Let's just say for sure in terms of learning, he wasn't like an Eoni. Like again,
Yeah.
he just had different like. Again, in this world, it's you're splitting hairs, but they had differences of.
I think you should talk more about this because I think what you represent, at least to me, again, I'm not.
But most people get this wrong. You're about to go say a bunch of things, and the odds are you're probably 100% wrong. Okay, yeah, go on.
I think that you.
Having said that, the
Just
floor
telling
is
you.
yours.
You are a voice who speaks to a frustrated, disaffected yeshiva or seminary, people who are trying to build their lives and their education didn't take them from their 20s into adulthood in a seamless way. And there's a lot of frustration and there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of disappointment.
So
I think you message to that in a very powerful way.
I disagree with that. A lot of people think that. That's very much not the case.
But
I may have a
doesn't
lot
it
of
tell you
anger.
something that you're not in charge of how you're perceived? Meaning, who cares what that's not what I'm going for. It's not what I'm doing. That's the message that you send out, and I think you should listen to it. It's important. It's powerful. You represent something, even if you don't want to. But that's how I think how you're perceived.
It's okay. So a couple of things. Number one is that it's very possible I'm frustrated and angry and all those things, but it has nothing to do with the yeshiva system. I mean, maybe it has nothing to do with Yiddishkeit. I'd say it that way. No, it doesn't. Anyone that knows me will tell you that doesn't. Again, I have a problem a little with certain aspects of it, but I'm significantly more nuanced than you would think I believe.
Probably. I'm sure.
Against like the system.
No,
like,
it could also be like you are a historian and a sociologist that analyzes
Yes,
communities, and
nonstop.
everyone has to fit into one of your theories in a way.
I develop they're bespoke theories. Everybody gets their own theory.
Right, but if he's not, if he's an outlier and he's not fitting into that theory, it's like there's a glitch in the 1840 mold.
I don't believe him. He thinks he's in charge of how he's perceived, and
what does that mean? I think to a degree. Okay, I'm very, very much well aware
yeah.
of how I'm perceived on this podcast. First of all, you have to understand something. There's an aspect of this podcast that is extremely intentional with how I want it to be perceived.
Fully. I mean, this is brilliant. Can I just make a note? Your studio is the nicest studio I have ever. I've been in a lot of different podcast setups. This is unreal. It's so intentional and so thoughtful. It's really, really
First of all,
impressive.
thank you so much. I appreciate that greatly. So thank you for the compliment. But if this is as intentional, just like you're saying this is intentional, it's not just the way the studio is. It's also the marketing of it. And
Of course.
So my point being is that you're saying I'm not in control of how I'm perceived. And I'm telling you, I specifically come across in a very specific way to a large degree because I do want to be perceived a specific way for the purpose of
Correct.
how my podcast is going to move
But
forward.
that's not who you are saying outside the camera.
There's an element of it, of course, of who I am. I'm not saying that that I'm a fake
Oh,
version.
I
sitting
fully agree
here,
with that.
But I would say that I think most people would say are close with me, that there's probably a very, very different element as well.
What do you think is the biggest difference between who you really are and what's not captured on the podcast? I could already come up with a few things because I'm meeting you for the first time in person. But what do you think is the biggest distinction that is not transmitted on the show?
I think I am a naturally polarizing person. I would say that. Again, first of all, I don't like talking about myself, to be totally honest. I always tell people I'd rather
man.
people come to just like their own conclusions.
Came with a holistic questions.
You could ask, but I'm just saying I like when people, I always say it doesn't make a difference with parenting. It's like you have the parents who say, I did this, I did that. It doesn't make a difference what you think you did or how you think you made your kid feel. It makes a difference how the kid.
That's what I'm
you
saying.
have to figure
That's what
it
I
out.
was saying.
Well, right. I understand that you're saying that. So I recognize what the perception is.
Yeah.
I would say that probably, but that's my point of saying like I don't like talking about myself because I'd rather just let people come to their own
You
conclusions.
don't want a chance to set the record straight. I actually think this is interesting.
No,
Because I also had
definitely
certain
interesting.
perceptions
Yeah.
like before and after.
it's
meeting
definitely
you.
interesting, but
And I could see that it animates you in a way.
what's that?
The perception, the persona versus who you really are, which I think anybody who's in the public square struggles with that. Like, you don't really know me. Like, don't let it get confused. You don't really know me. So when somebody says, "Oh, I think you represent X, Y, or Z,"
I've had this exact conversation with so many people since I came on the podcast.
Which is what specifically?
Having to explain to them that you don't represent a disgruntled segment of the yeshiva system.
I hear, yeah, but not just that. I mean, even Zach, go back to Zach. He's told me many times. He's like,
I love you, Zach.
yeah, no, he's told me many times. He's like, Laibel, I tell you one thing, I defend you all the time. So I was like, I respect that. Look, going back,
I'm
what
saying this
was
with
your exact
love.
question?
What aspects of yourself do you think is not transmitted on the show?
I think, so I was saying to you that I think that on the show, I'm a polarizing human being, right? Like that's what I was saying.
Sure.
And I think on the show, I on purpose maximize the polarization.
Okay.
I think that probably
You're more agreeable in person, you think? I think so.
yeah, probably.
We hugged it out when we met.
No, I'm just saying, I'd say that I don't think if you spoke to most of the people that are close with me and that know me on a more personal level, I don't think that they would respond to the people that have all their opinions that don't know me at all, that are just like total bystanders, never met me. They would say like, you're not understanding the full context. That's likely what they would say.
Interesting.
I would think.
I think you should talk more about this.
I had a microcosm of that experience when we first met. Like it was the first, I would say, like 20 minutes were exactly what I was envisioning. Like I walked into an office, he texted me, I'll be out. I'm in the middle of finishing a real estate deal. There was a hookah. It
was terrible.
There was a hookah. There was a hookah on the table next to an art scroll Gemara, and I'm like, this guy's office is exactly what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But it flipped because right before I left, he said, "Wait, I want to make you a coffee," and
No, that's why I have
himself,
no
it was
doubt.
like- it was
that
like the-
there's a
the Kohen Gadol cleaning out the
graciousness
Trumas
that is not
Hadeshin.
transmitted, and like a graciousness and agreeableness. You can see
gosh.
you came in at 20 different seltzers.
it's very
I was offered when I
cliche to
came
say
in.
like his bark is what is stronger than his bite,
Listen,
but
No, but that's not even what I'm
it's
saying.
true.
But what I'm saying is what the voice of what it connects, who it resonates with. There's a core demographic to every show that it builds off of.
Listen,
And
I'm
I think
gonna
that's
tell
an
you this. I'll
important
tell you
demographic.
straight. I'm a very much a nonconformist, and I call things to every element as much as I could see it, and I question myself daily on if I'm being nogeh b'davar, if I'm missing something. I spend a significant amount of time of my day and life, previous years, really looking deeply into all of my actions and what I'm doing to clearly make sure that I'm not missing something. I would say the first line I do every week that I sit in therapy is I say to my therapist straight up, I tell him, this is what's going on, this is how I feel, am I missing something? Like, is there any aspect of what I'm saying that I'm missing? And, you know,
I think it's
you
very-
have to pride yourself on being able to. I trust very few people, but the people I trust in extremely high regard. So, and you have to be able to, when they tell you something, call it Das Torah, even though we could go on with that for a long time, because I obviously don't agree with different facets of that. But there has to be there's an aspect for me with people that I really trust that I'm just like, all right, hands down. I don't know, like, I could think I know better, but I'm going to listen to them because I trust them and they've led me on a wise path for their entire life.
It would be my dream to
it.
do a deeper psychological dive on the creation of Laibel. I know that's not why I'm here. I find you genuinely fascinating. Most of what you just said, I think, is also informed through our own biases of our self-perception and all of that stuff. And I see you get like, there's certain like unprocessed, almost like tension points. Even when you said Das Torah, like you got like little tense. I felt
it's a
the
very,
tension.
very unique space.
I felt it.
It's a very, very unique space. No,
You're projecting a little
I'll give
bit
you a
here.
quick. Right,
No, I
so
saw it
didn't
there.
wanna say
Roll
that.
back
I
the
didn't wanna say
camera.
that yet,
Roll
but-
back the camera. There was a tension. There was a
No.
clench. I saw it.
No, because it's a very, very specific.
It's a trigger word.
I'll say it like this. There's a very, very specific nuance. Do I believe it? I'm not all or nothing. Like, meaning
Of course not.
most people that get angry are like, oh, Das Torah is BS. And I don't. I see part of it as being BS, and I see part of it that's very, very real and very, very important for society, because the minute that you think you have all the answers, there's a level of arrogance that blinds you from the ability. You can't trust you have to be able to see outside yourself. It's a very basic thing, and have to trust that you don't know everything. So there is an element of that and a balance there that you have to be able to listen to people, and just because you think you know everything, the whole foundation of Torah, let's say, is there are things that we don't do, even though we think, oh, why can't I wear shatnez? What the hell? F this, that I can't wear shatnez. Who made this up? Well, there's a concept in Torah. It's a chok. We listen to the Torah because we know that the Torah is the emes, and we put aside our brain and we listen to something greater than us, right? So that concept is applicable. Also, there's a humility within that that's applicable to real life. So but at the same time, the concept of Das Torah as a sweeping, just like be bittul your das, which you'll hear that also, of just like stop thinking and just listen to what your Rav says. Like, no, fuck that, with all due respect. Like, who is this guy that I should just automatically listen to him? So there's a lot of nuance and depth there that has to really, really be explored before we're just like.
When you talk on these topics, I still hear an unprocessed tension. That's my honest.
I'm not
truth.
here to.
I say that with deep love.
No
I say that
problem.
with deep love.
Or we're actually here to talk about you, so maybe we should get into that.
Yeah.
feel
No,
like
this was I'm living my dream right
Yeah,
now.
no, I understand.
This isn't the dream.
All right, everybody, want to take a quick second to give a big shout out to our sponsor for this episode, CubX. CubX is an IT company that personally does my own IT. I've also recommended these guys to at least 7 close friends of mine that have very successful companies. They have all come back to me and said things that these guys are second to none. This is not a company that when you call them, you have to wait on hold for 25 minutes. This is not a company when you get through to someone that doesn't know exactly what they're doing. These guys are top notch. You call them, you get through in 60 seconds. You can get right back to work. For me, that's the number one thing. When I have a technology issue, I don't want to be waiting on hold. I want the problem fixed immediately. These guys are incredible. Specifically, they operate and focus on people with small businesses, 5 employees or more. They also have companies that are on staff for 500 plus employees. They're very, very big in the healthcare industry. If you want to reach out to them, you can hit them at 732-444-8771. Press 2 to speak to someone in the sales department. You can also email them at hello@cubx.com. That's hello@cubx.com, or you could check them up on cubx.com. That's cubx.com. Again, my personal endorsement, wouldn't give it. I'm an impatient motherfucker, as everyone here knows. If these guys weren't the best, I wouldn't be recommending them. Give them a call if you are not happy with your current IT company or started a company and need a great IT company. These guys are the people. All right, back to our episode now.
Dovid, can you catch us up first? Because like you definitely talk a lot about yourself and your own experiences on your podcast. But before we get into it, we definitely have some specific questions. Before we get into that, give us like the 5-minute elevator pitch, like where you grew up, what's your story, how you ended up.
Sure. I grew up in Lawrence.
Give us the story arc.
I grew up in Lawrence, New York. You heard a little bit about my grandfather. That's my mother's father. He became a rabbi in Portland, Maine. My father grew up in North Adams, Massachusetts. That was like a really picturesque town. My Zadie still remembers seeing Norman Rockwell bike riding through town. It's like that kind of thing. 1950s Orthodoxy, which essentially was not super careful about the details of Jewish life and law. My father ended up going to Yeshiva University. He's an oncologist. I'm from a family of 5. I am an educator. I educate at Yeshiva University. I look at
And you track to like modern yeshivish, like which institutions?
Oh, institutions. Yeah, I grew up probably in like the I call single gender modern Orthodox. It's
Explain
like a
that.
slice of modern Orthodoxy. The modern Orthodox world that separates boys and girls schooling. So I went to South Shore for elementary school, and I went to DRS for high school, but it was always all boys. Then I went to Shalavim, Israel, very run of the mill. And then was the little turn. I got a little bit of that yeshivish taste. That Tom.
Talking about nicotine, by the way. That's the yeshiva.
That's the yeshivish. Nobody ever tells you that. They talk about the yeshivish stuff. What is that, Tom?
He's talking about weed.
It's nicotine. It's nicotine.
No, weed is a modern Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah, only in the past couple of years
no.
has
Nicotine
the
It's becoming yeshiva.
yeah they
Yeshiva
they
Tom
annexed the part of the modern world.
I then went, I learned in Ner Yisrael for a few years, and then I did smicha at Yeshiva University. I did a master's in Chassidus, studying Reb Tzadok, who I talk about a lot, Reb Tzadok HaKohen Lublin. And then I did a PhD, a little U-turn at
Rabbi Doctor.
at the new school. I did a PhD in public policy, focusing on how religious institutions message after a religious leadership crisis.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Head of school gets accused of being really inappropriate. I focused on sexual malfeasance. Head of school ends up doing something very inappropriate. How do institutions respond to that when their religious leader is accused of doing something inappropriate?
But that's a PhD? That's something you need a PhD in?
You don't need a PhD to talk about it, but my
The synagogue brand, like you kind of started your career.
Yes.
Catch us up on the book and everything like
I
that.
started, the questions that fascinated me most were questions about how people rebound and process from disappointment and failure. I actually, before I did my PhD, I wrote a book called Synagogue about sin and failure in Jewish thought. I should have brought that as a prop. Rather than a picture of our grandparents. And
No one cares about
plug the book. But I wrote a book, Synagogue, about sin and failure in Jewish thought. And afterwards, I dealt with the same question about how you deal with failure and disappointment. How do you process those things from an institutional point of view? Like, how do institutions rebound after a major mess up where one of their leaders, a religious leader, and I focused on the Orthodox Jewish community, gets accused of something very inappropriate, is guilty, found guilty. How does the institution rebound from that? Like, what happens next? Who do they communicate with? How do they communicate with them?
It's hard to me, but could have used you.
For real. Unfortunately, every time when I was writing my dissertation, every week, I'd be like, oh, this is so relevant right now. This is so relevant
I just
right
don't
now.
understand. I'm sorry going back to the same question. My understanding of a PhD was that it's like, again, I know nothing. I dropped out of school in 10th grade. So granted, I have tremendous ignorance in this area.
It is not shocking to me that you don't know the inner workings of PhD degrees. I say that with
This is a screaming PhD.
I say that with a great deal,
Deep
deep love and admiration, but this is not like, oh, you don't know. But like,
No,
yeah.
but I don't understand. It's like, I understand getting a PhD in, I don't know, like an overall field. This seems to be like your nuance.
So let me explain.
Like, I'm getting a PhD in how to handle a team
great.
that when, like...
So when I say that, I'm talking colloquially. PhDs are in field. So my PhD is in public policy. That's the field.
That makes sense.
And then the thesis that you write, you take a bunch of courses and then you write your thesis. That's the big paper that you write.
Okay.
Different lengths. And my PhD thesis was on this topic.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
What would you say, like, on a person? If I was your therapist psychoanalyzing you, what in your life was the triggering thing that made your whole professional life be about, like, rebounding from failure and disappointment? If you don't mind me asking such a direct question.
Totally. My perennial mental health problems always making me feel other or different than the cohort I was in, and making me feel
break
like
down a lot of those words
failure.
into English?
I want to hear that. Hold on one second. Yeah. Fine. Break it down into English.
I have mental health problems, like I think most, but prone to depression, anxiety, that warps the way that you look at the world and warps the way almost that you feel in the world. So there were periods in my life, almost throughout my life to this very day, where you feel very very other, very different than others. For sometimes when you're a little kid, it's almost inexplicable. Like when I was little, I wasn't able to sleep over. That was like my first, I feel different. I cannot sleep over. It's too scary for me. And the first time I slept over, I was in 10th grade or maybe 9th grade. Like I needed coaching. I missed every single weekend bar mitzvah. I went to one weekend bar mitzvah. I needed 72 hours of coaching with my mother, walking back and forth on the deck saying, Dovid, you can do this.
You grew up with severe anxiety.
And depression, anxiety,
Yeah, well,
both.
they're intertwined for the most part.
Yeah. And then I think for me, a major thing, I've spoken about this many times before, was my hair went gray prematurely. And that felt like I went through a midlife crisis when I was like 17, 18, like you're physically changing. And that otherness and that difference plays a role. It played a role in my professional life. Like I had a hard time. I took every test, LSATs and GREs. Like, what do I want to be? But I always felt so different and so removed. It made it very hard to kind of like go through the regular path of professional growth. It makes it hard to be in relationships. It took me a very long time to get married. That otherness, that sense that's fueled from inadequacy, or
Where do you think that otherness and that disassociation, like you're the outsider, and like everyone else is just living their life playing basketball and being a child, and you're like outside of that.
Yes.
And you can't explain, right? You can't point. You're just a confused kid. Where do you think that comes from?
I think a lot of it came from, again, I'm talking as that like that. I think a lot of it comes from the way that you see your parents.
Okay.
I think for me, I have so much gratitude. Like, I am made by my parents. My parents are my heroes. They're my educators. They're my teachers. I always say you could put my parents on one side of the scale, and every Rebbe, teacher, professor I've ever had would not outweigh the influence that I've had, positive influence that I've had from my parents. But I think the otherness that I felt was that my parents were not into the couple social scene. Never. And I never felt like my parents were friends with my other friends' parents. And I think that made me feel older, and I didn't have any older brothers. You come from a very big family.
It's very interesting.
I had three older sisters, but I never felt like our family was like integrated in like the 5 towns social. I grew up and matured and realized like my father was saving lives, curing cancer. My mother is one of the most generous, thoughtful, creative.
I grew up
in Lawrence.
God, and your father did what again?
He's an oncologist. Cancer.
Right.
So when you get older, mature, but my dad wasn't the little league coach. My dad, like, he wasn't that
interesting theory. I got to be honest.
You're talking to for someone. I mentioned it to Laibel yesterday, but like you definitely spent a lot of time talking about rabbis, the quote unquote rabbi syndrome.
I've written about it. I have a chapter in my book.
This is two rabbis.
Rabbi son
syndrome.
syndrome.
Then on this podcast.
Oh, that's half the reason why I'm here. I'm so excited.
I think that's a very, very.
So tell us, why are we so messed up?
But okay.
No, I'm giving you the answer through the eyes of maybe I didn't understand your question through the eyes of.
You answered the question. You did not answer the question. I just
the eyes of Sarah. That's when I first felt otherness. When you feel like your family is not integrated into like the social expectations of a community.
I get that, but you had debilitating otherness. You didn't just have otherness. There's a lot of parents.
A lot of that's chemical. A lot of that's like biological.
Okay.
I've got you need to be medicated for this stuff. Yeah, of course. Okay. That's where it heightens normal experiences. It heightens normal things that when you are prone to anxiety and depression, your normal way going through the world, you're so much more sensitive. It's like walking out to take out the garbage, but you don't have enough time to put on socks and shoes. You walk a different way because you feel every single pebble in the driveway.
I get what you're saying. It's again, I'm not. Yeah.
And is your career, you think, very much not just a reaction, but like the only thing you could have ended up in as a result of this? Meaning like you're so debilitated by
my career. I look at, if you could call it a career, it is a shocking miracle that I think in many ways, in a very roundabout way, but I took the long, short way. You know, I think there were a lot of shortcuts that I could have taken, which would have actually taken me much, much longer to find any professional satisfaction in my life. And I took a longer route that ultimately I think got me there in a shorter way, like the Talmud says in Eruvin. But yeah, I don't think I look sometimes with envy all the time with people who have just like, my wife works for a major accounting firm. Like I'm jealous of her that she has the personality to work that 9 to 5 job and do that. I don't think I was ever capable of that.
At what point,
You're
like,
jealous of that?
Yeah.
I would never be jealous.
I mean, jealous of that because she has a different constitution. She has a different constitution. It's a different way to go about the world. I don't want to trade our lives. I couldn't do that. I wouldn't survive 3 days in the
I
work
wouldn't
that she
want
has
to
to do.
change my life with anyone else's.
God forbid.
I
No.
understand what you're saying.
When
You're
I
jealous
say
of the
jealous, I look at
simplicity
it
of
as like, yeah, there's something. It would be nice. There are days where I feel like it would be nice. Like I want to be a bagger in a grocery store some days of just like having a job
Wakes
where you
up
don't
with
have
an
to
existential
think. It's
crisis
not
every day.
creative. Where every day your job is to put especially when you're an educator in the way that I am, you are putting yourself out there to the world. Sometimes they don't want to hear it. Sometimes they don't like it. Sometimes you mess up in your delivery and you feel like you're recreating your very sense of self every single day. That's very challenging.
Yeah, no, I definitely I hear that. I would say there was a point in my life where I felt similarly. I thank God I've gotten to a place. I say this with deep love, but I've gotten to a place where there was a point in my life for sure, my teenage years, where I wished I was someone else, and I don't know. I've just gotten to a point where I would not trade myself for anyone.
Oh, God forbid.
Like,
I just want
hell
to
no.
say on the record, I'm not looking to trade lives with anybody. One of the great miracles is that I was able to create the career that really fit my talents, my skills, who I am, all of my imperfections.
Why does it have to be a career and an outside thing? Why can't it just be you?
Why can't what?
Why does it have to be that you
I'm talking about my
created
professional life right now.
No, I got that, but I'm saying, let's say you didn't create a professional life that was ideal for you. Then what? It wouldn't be okay.
I think I would be suffering. I think it would be very hard for me. I think it would be very hard for me to have lived my life where my professional life was, and I think that's a fault. That's not a good thing.
I agree.
What I am jealous of are people who don't feel that sense of commitment.
Because you need to feel like special. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think a lot of comedians have this. A lot of
Totally.
comedians,
I
they
suffer
couldn't
from that
do
also.
anything else. There's a great documentary called The Comedian with Jerry Seinfeld and this other comedian whose name I always forget, but it's such an important documentary to watch, especially if you're in the public sphere. It's this guy. Look up the name of this guy. He was on Teen Wolf, like one movie. He's not really so famous, but they made this documentary about an up and coming comedian and Jerry Seinfeld. And this guy, he's like 29 or so at the time. He turns to Jerry Seinfeld and he's like, I don't know, like it's so hard for me. Like I'm coming up. I don't know what my job is like. All my friends are becoming lawyers and they have all these 9 to 5 jobs. I don't even know like what to tell my parents is that I'm doing. And Jerry like cuts him off. Like, tell your parents like. What are you talking about? Like the excitement of comedy is the unknown, is the angst, is the mystery of what are we going to do? That's my life now. I love it. I couldn't have done anything else. And Jerry then tells him this story, which is exactly what you just said, where he says the story of some symphony. I don't know if it's a real story or a true story, where the symphony, where they go around playing and they're all about music and this band, this beautiful music. And they're on this boat going to play their next gig and the boat breaks down and they have to climb onto shore. They climb onto shore with all their instruments. They're sopping wet. And they look in through a window and they see this family. It's nice. They're sitting there eating dinner, watching television. It's warm. And these comedians with these musicians with their instruments soaking wet look to one another, be like, I don't know how people live like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's what you were saying. And I agree with that. I don't know, but sometimes I look in the window and see people who have those professions and have those careers. And you're like, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think the
that would have been awesome. It would have been easier.
So I'll say this. I think that I hear you. I think that there's an anxiety specifically that in the beginning, before you've broken through, that is extreme, that is, especially for people that are like what you're saying, there's a heavy anxiety, and I can relate to this. So maybe I'm
You
projecting.
find the name of the guy?
No, I was looking for it because there's a quote I keep on my phone all the time.
But I'm saying at the end of the day, I think there's an anxiety of like, am I going to make it?
Yes.
So that anxiety is a painful anxiety, especially if it takes time to make it. And especially if you don't have a healthy mindset and you struggle from anxiety and depression and your neural pathways are not proper, the way you'll see everything is more a problem with you of why it's not happening versus.
But I want to add something very important to that, because making it in this world, what that destination of making it does not exist until you arrive. As opposed to every other field, making it in law, the destination exists before you get there. It's called making a partner in a big law firm. Making it in a medical world, the dental world, what it means to make it exists before you arrive. Having your own practice, this and that. When you're in the public square, you're a comedian, you're putting stuff out there. what it means to make it is so deeply personal to you. It doesn't exist until you actually get there. That's scarier. It's just scarier because there's no path that gets you there.
Right, there's no direct path.
Correct.
You can't take a test to go get there.
And
it's your talent. It's your
correct. And it doesn't even exist until it's manifest, until it's realized.
Right, it's
But
hard
why
to
is that
visualize.
different? Hold on a second. But why is that different?
Mislabel did not exist until you started it, until it began off the ground. Then you started and you get off. But it's not like you knew you had something else you wanted to do. But the destination did not exist until you created
It's so
it.
intangible. I hear what he's saying. It's so intangible.
I mean, I know what I'm looking for. So, like, what do you mean that the destination did not exist? Of course it exists. It still exists to this day.
Because
It's
if I
not my
would have asked you
destination.
10 years ago, I would have said, what was the destination? To be a podcast host? Like the
people are-
exact station does not exist until you create it. You create the chair of your success. The chair does not exist before you actually create it. That's the difference between this kind of work and the work of a doctor and a lawyer.
Why can't I say the destination is 1 million followers on Instagram, whatever, and selling out arenas? Why is that not my
you
destination?
could because it's not really.
And that's a sad destination. I'm not talking about those kind of people.
No, but that's not even true
That's
for
not my
you.
destination either. I think people who go into the world of influence and their metric for success is an amount of followers are maybe they'll reach it, maybe they won't.
I disagree with that totally. I mean, it's a what you're saying right now is the most cliche line of all time. Obviously, it goes without saying. Oh, don't care about your follower count. I
didn't say that either. Careful. I didn't say that.
So
I
elaborate.
didn't say don't care about it. I said the arrival, what it means to have made it, is never. There's nobody who's made it who their arrival was their follower count on Instagram.
That's the personal achievement that they set for something for them. Then why
Who
not?
on earth? I don't think there's any healthy or really influential person who that was their. And you're right, that does
hold on a
exist.
second. What are you talking about? You have many, many different metrics as to which way you.
Those are
different
metrics
goals, and
that
different
are-
goals. Hold on. You have many, many different goals in life
They're
that you want to hit.
metrics.
Yeah, but it's a goal also. Why is it crazy to set a goal that I want to have 1 million followers? Why is that a terrible thing? Yeah, and I
That's
also
not terrible.
want. And
I
I
didn't say it's
also want.
terrible.
So what are you saying? If you're not saying.
No, I think I
I
can
don't
split.
understand what you're
I think I can split the difference here. I think what you're saying is that
If that's your only goal,
yeah,
maybe.
that's what he's
Correct.
meaning.
Oh,
there are many
yeah.
ways,
You can't-
Laibel.
I'm
There
not
are many
talking-
ways that you could reach 1 million followers that you will still feel you have
Exactly.
failed. Right? If you have to run around outside naked
Yeah, okay, fair
and
enough.
you
Yeah.
reach
Or even more so, the way that you reach 1 million followers, that's the success. That's the goal.
right.
What got you there.
want it to be part of a certain brand, mislabeled.
Yeah,
a certain,
I agree with all of that, but I'm not sure. But you have tangible goals. You need to set tangible goals. It's like with money.
Correct.
Someone wants to make $1 million a year. You would say the same thing about making about
Correct.
followers.
But the vehicle that will get you there does not exist until you create it, as opposed to law and other, more
God, you're
stable
saying there's a
fields.
direct pathway to.
But there are people. I think his point's
I
true.
don't
There
know
are
that I
people
fully agree
that
with
that's
this entire
goal
point.
is in today's age. Its goal is to have 1 million followers. There are people like that.
It's not a crazy goal either. It's a very tangible metric that you now
as
did
part
X,
of
Y, and
as
Z.
part
It's
of
the
a
met-
larger goal.
I guess so.
It's an
It's a
element.
metric to a destination, but
There could
I'm
be-
not. That's all I'm talking about. There's nobody who says, "So what did you arrive at?" They say, "Oh, I feel proud that I got 1 million followers." That's wonderful, of course, but I think I'm talking about something different. Of just like when you step out into the world, what are you? What are you trying to become?
Yeah, of course. There's an overall.
And that's scarier when you
Right.
step out
You
into the
Laibel
world.
Winner's
that
not
doesn't
trying
have
to be a
direct
person
path.
with 1 million followers.
You don't want. Whenever I go after something, I'll say this outright. I have multiple goals on a piece of paper that I aim for. Multiple. Now, one of those goals could be a goal that, in it of itself, could look like a very shallow goal, but it's one of many. So for me, building the studio was a goal. I accomplished it. Is the entire thing, all I care about? What is Laibel Wiener? His identity? He built a studio. What is Laibel Wiener? He has 1 million followers. No, but obviously the overall identity is, what I want is a more impactful, positive influence on the world and getting there in a positive way. I'm not saying not, but that doesn't mean if things don't work out exactly, I can't look at 10 different goals I set for myself in the beginning and say, well, I reached 7 out of 10 and that's great. I should just shit on the rest on those 7 because I didn't reach the remaining 3.
I think your instinct for polarization allowed you to fully not hear the words that I said, and you basically just arrived back at what I said. So I'm just letting you know
again,
that
so go
as
again,
a-
then I'll
as
listen
an-
again.
as an interview.
Go
No,
on.
I don't want to even repeat it again. But for real, I'm giving you like feedback,
But
live
if you're going to give me
feedback.
feedback, you have to repeat.
Meaning,
You can't just say and not repeat.
we're talking about the role that a profession plays in somebody's life and the different ways that it plays there. And then we shifted. I don't know why you were like having a conversation with almost like somebody else, like the 1 million followers part.
No, you said that if someone has a goal of that, let's just say 1 million followers,
Yeah.
then you were saying that is not a...
Because that's not what I was talking about. What I was trying to say, just to hear, is that these are metrics to evaluate that vehicle, of whether the vehicle was successful. But what is difficult, the point that I was trying to make, is that in these careers, you called it the direct path, is that what's difficult is that you have to create the vehicle. It doesn't really exist until you create it.
Okay, I'm not sure exactly where we're arguing.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was
because
saying.
okay.
I don't think we are arguing.
Okay.
That's why. And I felt that your instinct for polarization, which I love,
It's not polarization. I'm actually saying this. I think it's important for people listening.
Okay.
Like literally.
Yeah.
I think when you start a project, okay, I'm saying this also because it benefited me.
You need metrics.
When you need metrics, and you should be proud of yourself if you hit those metrics.
Fully agreed.
That's it. And hitting those metrics are a piece of getting to the actual overall goal that you want to get to. So if you reach a bunch of those, but you don't have everything that you want, you should look at the ones that you reached in order to keep progressing. I don't see, if your entire goal and all you care about is a following count, I would agree with you.
I think we got away from the point. The point was just that the point was just that in defined fields, you have the entire goal
laid out. Yeah,
right?
Of course.
And
when you're in the creative space, the goal is the metrics are laid out, but you're calling it the vehicle. I don't like that word. The
way of getting there.
Right. The whole thing it doesn't exist yet until you have arrived. Yes.
Exactly.
It's your own really soul and being that has to create that.
Anyway, the quote I was pulling up had nothing to do with that. It was just something that
What was the quote?
No, you had touched upon it before, is that because you said a lot of comedians are like this, that people who are driven by anxiety, right? It's surprising because a lot of comedians have a lot of anxiety, and you would think that'd be something that is not part of, because like getting up there is an inherently vulnerable thing to do. So something that changed my like view on life and like the creative space in general was Will Ferrell was giving a speech at I think it was USC.
Yeah,
addresses.
it's great, phenomenal.
He has this phenomenal quote. You know when you have this like kind of intangible feeling, you don't know what's going on, and then someone says it, and you're like, it's that. So that was a moment.
The quote?
The quote was, he said, "But my fear of failure never." He's talking about he was so scared to like be a stand-up comedian and be vulnerable. He said, "But my fear of failure never approached in magnitude to my fear of what if. What if I never tried at all?" Meaning he was such a fearful, anxious person. He was so motivated by fear. The only way for him to get up there and pursue his dreams was to have this greater fear of it being possible and him never pursuing it. And that was a life altering moment when I heard that. That was exactly
the worst
what was
thing in
going
life
on.
is regret. I mean, you don't want to be 50 years old and
yes, but here it's
not have
different.
gone after what you want.
Here it's an intangible regret. It's a regret of something that never happened as opposed to a regret of something you did. It's very different.
Right. One more time.
Meaning, what you could have a regret of a decision you made. It's a very tangible regret. Here,
it's the unlived life.
Right. It's a regret of
you don't
something
even
you
know
don't
what you're
that.
missing.
Right.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah.
That's why it's so. I've said before to people. I mean, obviously, getting behind this, getting behind the mic, like it's a lot easier now than when I started. But in the very beginning, of course, it was very anxiety provoking. But I'm just like, I'm not gonna be 35 years old and not have done this. Like, this is my moment right now. Like, I'm 28 years old. It's either now or it's never. When I have Baruch Hashem kids and a wife, me being able to do this and start from the beginning, going to be very, very difficult.
Right. So that is exactly what I'm saying. Meaning the fear of not having done it just trumped the fear of doing it.
Well, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Wait 1 second. So, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to get into some other stuff with him because we haven't even touched upon like you obviously you're a podcast host and like you have this brand.
Yeah.
Like, there are some things I wanted to ask you about that. I feel like there's some tough questions that like people have not asked you.
Sure.
But before we get into that, can you like, what is your, in terms of you define yourself as an educator,
yes.
A podcast host, like you have a very specific demographic that which you're trying to serve. Can you like better define that for me? What is 1840? What is the goal? I know there's a line about balancing modern sensibilities with timeless Jewish values.
1840's target demographic are people who are living lives that are no longer mediated by institutions, meaning their target demographic, meaning they had this upbringing where they went through elementary school, high school. It's similar to this professional track that we've been talking about, where there's a clear path. There's a clear path. Where are you supposed to be in 10th grade? Where are you supposed to be in 12th grade? You're supposed to go to this camps. You're supposed to go to this yeshiva, this seminary, wherever it is. Go to this college, this. And then all of a sudden your life opens up where it's not tracked in that way. And we're conditioned. We're one of the first generations, I think the first generation in all of Jewish history that is really tracked in a very real way from nursery all the way to your mid-20s. And what 1840 is trying to address is what is the experience of stepping out from that track and trying to recreate or find a way forward when it's not so clear just what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And we deal with the points of dissonance that I think people really struggle with: theological dissonance, sociological dissonance, and emotional dissonance, which is the sense of that the clarity that I once felt when I was under an institution. I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing in 10th grade. I know what the metrics are, what the goals are, become a lot less clear. It starts to get muggy in your 20s. Then it's like total fog, your 30s, 40s. Like it could get really, really challenging. We try to address some of those issues.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. So how I assume you had this for yourself to a degree.
Yeah, I definitely have evolved a lot religiously. It's something I think about a lot. I'm reading a lot, but yeah, I felt this a lot when I was in yeshiva for many, many years. I learned for 10 years even after high school. I was in the shidduch system, and I think the way that I think about it, I was saying this earlier to somebody, the imagery that I would use, especially when you leave the yeshiva world in your 20s, because I don't think they do a really good job of transitioning people into independent adulthood. I think their institutions are phenomenal, but then there's this feeling like in the cartoons. Do you remember when like Bugs Bunny and like the Wile E. Coyote would be like chasing each other and they like go off a plateau, but they keep running until they look down, and then all of a sudden they look at each other
Totally.
and they crash down.
Totally.
So I think that's an experience that a lot of people have in their 20s. We don't realize how tracked our lives have been. Up until, now it's probably you're 22, 23 for a lot of people, whether or not they're in the yeshiva world, the modern Orthodox world, but it's very tracked. And now all of a sudden you're like left off like, okay, they got married, good, go off on your own, or they're still single, so we're going through that crisis, and that'll be what defines you, whatever it is. But then all of a sudden there's this feeling of like, you look down, you're like, wait, I'm not even on the plateau anymore. And then a lot of people try to keep on running like in the cartoons, and then a lot of people crash immediately.
You think this happens in married life as well, or you're more
Absolutely, it happens in married life. Yes, I think it happens. I think what happens in married life.
Where does that happen?
I think a lot of people, it happens when I just had a voicemail with a voice note exchange with somebody yesterday, when they don't know how to be a parent in a home to young children, and they think that they should run their home with the same rules, culture, and tenor of what they see in the schools that they affiliate with. Right. I think there's a phenomenon where people are sending to schools that are more religious than their actual home is, and how they navigate that dissonance, I think, is very challenging for.
Do you think that's a problem? Like,
it's a huge problem. I think it's what.
I don't think it's necessarily a problem. I don't think your home should ever be perfectly aligned to the institutions you affiliate with.
Why?
Well, it depends how far it is, how often.
Yeah, or how big the gap is. You mean?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
but it doesn't have to.
Correct, but it doesn't have to be perfectly aligned. I think we had a generation, my parents' generation, for instance, none of them kept Shabbos. None of them.
Wait,
1950s Orthodoxy.
No, I can't go to 1950s. I would just say even in my generation, the parents were clearly a little bit more left, if you want to call it, than
the institutions they affiliate.
Yeah, if you were in any traditional yeshiva, you had to wear a hat and jacket by davening. Most of the parents.
The story of American Jewish history the last 100 years is basically the home. The home was nothing. They didn't know anything. They didn't know very much. A rabbi knew and one educator knew. And the institutions, which were started popping up in the 1950s, 1960s, had all the rules and built the culture and built yeshivas, and it saved Judaism in America. It wouldn't exist. But what happened is that people became so, I don't want to use the word addicted, but so shaped from these institutions. I think we've forgotten how to transmit religiosity through the culture of the home. And I think people struggle with this a great deal. And when they begin to feel that dissonance between what's happening in their kids' schools or even in their shul, and just it's a different flavor. It has to be more organic in the home. I think there are couples that fall apart. There's couples that feel suffocated by their own home life, which breaks my heart. And there are people who just make terrible ABC mistakes with raising young children. They don't know. They're not first grade teachers, and they're running either pushing too hard, not at all. And there's this deep sense of insecurity. I think it's very prevalent in the Orthodox world, where parents are like, we have no idea what we're doing. And they all search and try to go, I think, to institutions to find the answers. And they don't realize that, like,
I feel like
you have to build the vehicle yourself.
I think I agree with everything you just said. My only thing is, though, I feel like...
But the point, that last point that I said, you have to build the vehicle yourself. I think that parenting and the culture you build in the home is the same as the distinction between, what we were making between comedy and the legal world. The legal world is institutions.
Yeah,
you know the definition each way. You have to create the vehicle when it comes to...
for sure, 100%. I mean, I think parenting is as good as the work you put into yourself, and as good as a human being as you yourself are, is as good of a parent as you're pretty much going to be. So I think it behooves most parents, if they want to be good parents.
Behooves. It's one of my favorite words. It's a very rabbinic
I have a great
word.
vocabulary, even though I dropped out of 10th grade.
But there's
we often talk about your vocabulary
there's a
on this show.
sermonic vibe to the word behooves.
It does.
Yeah.
That's the truth, though. Like, if you have your shit in order, like personally, the odds of you being a great parent are going to be, exponentially higher.
I'm so intrigued. It's very interesting. I'm very intrigued by your comfort cursing on air. I'm very intrigued by it. Can I be honest with you? I'm not a perfect person. Like, let's say in the last
year... I love the people that come onto the show and they think they know me, and then they figure out in 1 second that they don't. It's hilarious. I get a right.
I'm not coming. You know what I'm coming with. I'm coming with deep love and admiration. You understand that. You understand what I'm coming with. But it's so interesting. I think it says more about me than you. Maybe I don't know. Like, it's not even my person. I cannot curse in conversation. I cannot do it.
Yeah, it takes a. By the way, as someone who had to,
and I'm not it's not because I'm so holy or I'm I don't know how to curse in conversation.
Off air or even on air.
Or I'm saying off air ever.
So where do you curse? Don't.
No, I've.
That's true. I noticed that. I didn't notice that. You don't curse in conversation.
I do not
the only
curse
time
in
I've ever heard
conversation.
you curse is if you are quoting someone, like if you're quoting a routine or a movie or something.
Why you gotta throw me under the bus though?
Sorry.
Where do you curse?
I will to people. Let's say.
On a phone call, like very intense?
No, like my mother, my spouse, like somebody where I'm like, this is, and I'm just like so visceral and in so much pain, I'll use that to capture the emotion.
Yeah.
But I can't do it in conversation.
I will say this, that it's not something that I think is particularly a great attribute.
You don't even think about it though, right?
No, I mean, I know that in the moment, no. I think I could spend time thinking about it and not doing it if I'm intentional about it.
I think it's my upbringing.
I just don't.
When I hear it, I'm like, oh, that was the S word. Oh my god, like
the S word. I think we're that okay. I mean,
just said it. It's there. In conversation, it's a different thing.
But do you realize you have that?
Do you curse in conversation?
I do. But did you have that? You realize you have that? There was definitely a time in my life where I didn't, and I enjoyed having that weapon because then it meant
Seinfeld stopped.
It meant so much when I used it.
Seinfeld does not curse. I think he cursed in his early stand-up career.
It's fake news, by the way.
What?
When Seinfeld is in clubs in New York City, he curses. This is a big myth about.
Is that true?
Yes, I saw him in Gotham Comedy Club 2 weeks ago. He very much curses. All these so-called Jim Gaffigan also.
Furious right now.
Yeah. It's a
furious.
It's a myth when they
this
do their
interview is
specials.
not going as planned.
When they
wanted
do
my Seinfeld anecdote to really land.
When they do their specials and they're trying to appeal to a much broader audience, they will take out those curse words, of course. But when they're working through material and trying to be natural,
I'll say hell and I'll say bastard. I don't know why. Is that a curse word?
No, it's because you're Jewish. You're from because when you grow up using the word mamzer colloquially and it's okay.
I think it's a George Costanza. I think of George Costanza.
It's not. It's because the word mamzer is not a bad word.
Oh,
it's
that
a very
could be why.
technical
Interesting.
term, and then when we translate it, we just don't think of that as a bad word. I think that's where.
And right, that's a good point.
Okay, I'm sorry for that digression.
No problem. I forgot what I was.
Because we were talking about the institutional thing. Your phenomenon of the institutions being more to the right that you mentioned.
I was going to say, yeah.
I had the exact opposite. The experience of growing up as the son of a modern Orthodox rabbi who, by virtue of that, associates with, we'll call it single gender modern Orthodox schools.
Yeah.
But's family's way to the right of that is the exact opposite of that. And is also very difficult. And I would never appreciated that being less religious than the institutions you align with would be difficult. Because my struggle growing up.
Opposite, yeah.
Your father and mother are very gifted parents.
I really believe that they're the best parents in the world. I fully believe that.
They're
And
very gifted.
that doesn't always come across because my 90% of my comedy routine
I
is
would
about
not be
them.
surprised if a lot of what I said does not apply to you, because I think they really were able to process the legacy that they were coming into the home with and the position they had, but creating a home environment to raise healthy, normal, well-adjusted kids, obviously with one notable exception. But they really were able to do something remarkable.
So I wanted to ask you what I was getting to
Please.
was what do you think is the suggestion to that issue that I'm talking married specifically because I think single people have a significantly harder time, right?
Oh.
It's a different world.
Different ballpark.
So we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
For the married people, because more people get married, so it's more applicable to married people, I would
Yeah.
think. What do you think is the antidote to that? Meaning, is this an institutional problem in your opinion?
No.
It's not. It's just
They create the
you think they're
success of
creating the problem?
institutions created this. It's not a problem. They create a phenomenon.
is there a fault there? That's what I'm asking.
No,
There is.
Again, nitty gritty. No, it's not. They're
fine,
not
no
a fault.
problem.
This is success. They saved American Jewry, but at the expense of our confidence in the home. I think parents are insecure and they're not feeling a sense of confidence of what they are doing and transmitting in the home.
Granted. So what is your personal suggestion to someone who comes like in an overall sense? Obviously, with each person, it would be independent to that person.
Yes.
I understand, but in a general sense, what is your suggestion to help, let's say, the community and people going through this?
I think institutions, particularly yeshivas and seminaries, need to be a lot more in touch and honest with their exiting graduates about what they are going to confront, and should stop giving
Wait a second.
the speeches.
You just said the opposite.
That's
You just said
no.
it is not an institutional
I
problem. And
literally
then
was
you just
asking
Because I meant the institutions don't need to change.
You
But-
just said that.
No,
But didn't you just say that they
on
should
the
do a
way
better
out,
exit
on
strategy?
the way out,
Okay.
on the way out.
There should be like a pamphlet on the way out of Midmo.
reviews- correct.
Really?
On the way out.
A book?
My high school Menahel did this.
Why,
Not a
don't you
book.
think it makes more sense for them to
last 3 years?
fundamentally shift in their educational process?
I don't think it needs to such a fundamental shift. I don't think it will even help, and I don't think it would actually change the problem. I think that we need people who basically explain that what did you just experience? What did you
Okay.
just go through?
Are you talking about like a year in Israel now, a high school, or anything?
I think at every stage, I had this in my 12th grade, and the Menahel of DRS is Rav Yisrael Kamenetsky. At the 12th grade Shabbaton, he takes everybody together, and just the 12th graders together at the last Shabbaton of the year, and he says, it's the end of the year, he says, I just want to explain what you went through. I want to explain what you experienced. This is not unmediated Yiddishkeit. This was a lot of, feel-good stuff. This was a lot of... And he explains to you that you're about to experience something differently in your next stage. A little bit more where institutions are self-conscious of the experience they created and what you may be missing when you step onto the next stage. So I think a lot of, in the modern Orthodox world, what goes off the rails are yeshivas and seminaries. All of their messaging is like, hold on to this for the rest of your life. Don't let go of this experience. I think that's not good messaging. I think the messaging should actually be, we gave you a really important experience that will be reze, you'll have nostalgia, wear the sweatshirt, have the swag, but you're going to need something else for the next, 100 years of your life, God willing.
So it's
I understand what you're saying. I think it's crazy though.
what?
But suggestion?
To on the way out be like, by the way, the rest of your
So
life is
that's
different.
where I'm going to push back. on
No.
this.
Okay, fine. Sorry.
I'm gonna push back.
It's almost like,
No, I understand what you're saying. It's
I'm
very
going to push
valid.
back
I just
slightly
think
on
it's,
you.
I think it's
Please.
I
crazy.
hear 100% what you're saying.
as long as it's with love.
Deep love,
Deep love
obviously.
and admiration.
And admiration. And Kier also. Let's
Yeah.
not forget. I hear what you're saying 100%. I definitely think just slightly the antidote to this is slightly different. You're presenting a change you're presenting a 1 minute change. Effectively, they're on
How
the way
we
out.
transition.
Hold on. Yeah, how we transition. Meaning, let's keep the situation as it's
More or
been.
less,
More or
yeah.
less. And in the last 2 months, let's have a sit down every day and explain and give over and try to get into people's brains that the next, moving forward after this, it's going to be very, very different.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't agree with that. I think that people...
You think it's not enough?
For sure, but let me just elaborate. Again, goes back to a little bit what I said earlier. I think a person's capacity to be a good parent is most focused on, again, I'm not a parent, so everyone's gonna be like, oh, you're not a parent, what do you have? Well, I will say back to that, I think this is the most fundamental concept. This is a life concept.
You're also Laibel Wiener, gosh darn it. So you're allowed to say whatever you want
Exactly.
here.
There you go. You got it.
If you're
the
not
real
comfortable
answer.
cursing, don't say gosh darn it.
I just
It's
did.
so cringe.
I just did it.
No, I would still say, again, I think there's many who would agree that the most important fundamental, you could be told whatever you want in a 2-month stint. Ultimately, at the end of the day, like I said, you're going to be as good of a parent based off as good of a parent and how much you're working on yourself. So in the yeshiva system, where if they're focused more on, call me a Chavetz Chaim guy, but for the lack of better terms, character-based traits, and that is more focused on than just how many block Gemara can you learn, and that is actually the primary focus of an overall, let's say, exiting, and that's the foundational piece of exiting elementary school and overall high school, et cetera, when people actually become a parent, their basic mental health and ability to treat their wife and kids should significantly change because they're going to be good human beings and actually have an understanding of how to treat their fellow friend. As opposed to the guy learns all day, he's a dick. And oh, by the way, on his way out, I'm just telling you, things are going to change moving forward. Here you go.
Well,
get married. Like what? Like now what's going to happen? You have a narcissist who's now getting married.
I think the issue is twofold. I do agree with you. A lot of it is self-development. A lot of what makes that difficult is that the tools for self-development when you're single in yeshiva or in seminary are not the same tools that you need for self-development when you are, entering into adulthood.
Well, again, the tools for self-development.
When we talk about self-development, a Musar Seder
Yeah.
in yeshiva looks one way of what that self-development is.
Okay.
And I think when you are growing up and you step outside of yeshiva, you don't need to throw that out, but you need more tools. You need different tools that your teachers need to explain to you how to find those tools. One of them is like going to therapy. Hopefully you found it sooner. One of them is really learning how to talk to a spouse and talk to each other. They don't teach you that.
I'm not disagreeing at all with that. I'm just saying there has to be a level of significant intention-based focus on this particular arena, which is not a
correct
big thing.
It's not at all. And I want to add one other thing because it's a callback. It's a callback to what we spoke about earlier. The other thing that needs to change, and I think this is very important, are the metrics you use to evaluate your religious health. I think that people take the metrics that they got in yeshiva and seminary, going to minyan every day, which I'm not anti any of these things. They're all wonderful. And they don't realize that you may need a new set of metrics to evaluate your religious health when you are 29 and single, when you're 34 and have a few kids. You need different metrics to figure out, is this working? Is this going well? And I think a lot of people hold on to the metrics that they got, going back to whether it's we're not talking about 1 million followers, the metric of I'm that kind of, I'm a good guy, I'm a chashuv a bacher, whatever words they use,
for sure.
And they're using the wrong metrics to evaluate it, and they get stuck on these metrics for the rest of their lives and neglect their kids and neglect their spouse.
I wonder how much.
Teach their kids the same exact metrics. Again.
Yeah, and the cycle repeats itself.
I wonder how much of that is BS though. How much of it is actually just like we get less religious as we leave our institutions, and because.
If you have the right metrics, then
if you
should
change
be
the metrics to define success, of course, then you're going to be.
You should be getting more religious after. I think I'm more religious.
But is
than
that
I was
actually
in-
is that actually what's going on, or
he's making a good point. You
are we
can't
just
just
altering the metrics to make ourselves comfortable to say we're just as religious because because minyan doesn't make you religious, just feeling close to and.
Sometimes that happens. Sometimes that happens.
Hate to call out like whatever. I think this movement does amazing things for the Jewish people, and I'm very into it. But it's a good question I think people ask on the Thank You Hashem.
You're going there.
Thank You Hashem movement. I think it's a good question. It's
great.
I think it's a good question. Is
Thank You Hashem movement's a waste of time.
how much are we? How much is this something which is real? Are we changing our metrics because it's a genuine thing to do at a different point?
Or are you painting the bullseye around the arrow?
Exactly.
100%. That is one of the dangers. That's why I actually said.
And it's frustrating to someone where Yiddishkeit is
you
always.
You need self-aware educators to help with these transitions, and you need people in your life to help set you up from these different stages. I have had real conversations, more than I could count, with people who their issue is they're still hanging on to old, unhealthy metrics for themselves, for their kids.
What's the point? If we're just changing the metrics to make them so watered down and easy.
Because that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about watering down the metrics. I'm not talking about you just need a different set of metrics. You need to figure out what the health
You're not
in your life.
elaborating clearly. I don't think enough of him, because when you say you need a different set of metrics, he right away in his brain.
Your metrics when you were
I understand what
younger.
you're saying. I just think you don't think. Like, be honest now for a second. Do you not think that the people who have done that right now are not painting actual different set of metrics they are just watering down the original metrics?
Some are definitely.
You don't think replacing learning Night Seder Begin for singing Hallel for 3 hours in musical like while you're smoking weed is a watered down metric?
In my head, that's none of the metrics are.
You don't think that's what's going on in our community?
No, I'm talking about metrics about relationship with your spouse. How do you evaluate its health?
That's not a religious metric, though.
That is a religious metric. That is all of the work that I do.
Becoming a great human being is
that is
all.
That is exactly what I'm talking about, and you're going to get me really
but he's also hold on a second.
People don't realize. I want to continue. People do not realize.
I'll be macabre this rant.
When you have a spouse, the center of your religious life is your obligations to your spouse and to your children. And all the people who feel that my children are making me late to mincha, and my children are distracting me, and my spouse wants all this and all that. That is, they're holding on to broken metrics, and they're destroying the next generation with that.
They're killing their family. Not only that,
they're holding on to broken metrics, and when you don't realize that your religious metrics, at the heart of that, one of the most important metrics is your relationship to your spouse. That is the brokenness I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about, and it hurts me because I think the question and that immediate distinction that you made, I think most people subconsciously make it in their lives for the rest of their lives, and nobody corrects them until it's too late.
I definitely appreciate that, and I'll stand corrected. I know I'm wrong, but I also think what I'm saying is true. I also think that the Night Seder has been replaced with the Tish.
Because you're talking about a different demographic. I agree, and
I think what we could be saying are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all mutually exclusive.
Okay,
yes, Night Seder has been replaced with the Tish, and I think overall that's a good thing because I think the Night Seder as a metric to begin with was for such a. Our institutions are catered for the masses. And we basically said, what's the most idealistic metric we could have for the masses? Night Seder, learning, this and that. In the real world, and if you look at the history of the Jewish people, the amount of people who could actually sustain learning 2 starm a day, more at the morning and at night and raise a family. This is the elite Navy SEALs of the Jewish community.
I understand, but it's not only with learning. It's with general observance of Jewish law.
That is a reaction to the fact that the Orthodox community over the last 30 years, since the early 1990s, has exploded, and our institutions and our metrics and all of that needs to become more accommodating, thoughtful, and flexible to accommodate the new influx of what we represent now.
Well, most people.
For early American Jewry, in this picture, the people who went here...
We get the picture. You don't have to...
I'm bringing it up again. They chose to be there. My
really handsome.
My grandfather's siblings...
Why I look so good.
My grandfather's siblings did not go to yeshiva. It was a choice to go to... It was an insane choice to go to that. It wasn't planned out, but now you wake up and you have the track ahead of you, and part of that track is Night Seder, and part of that track...
I think Night Seder is a bad example, and that's my fault for bringing it up. My point is, I think we have created a community, not every community, a certain type of community, where people who are not strict, and myself included, I'm not the most religious guy, you know that, but people who are not necessarily so observant in the strict letter of the law, but throw a certain sticker and magnet on the back of their car and say nishmas every day and do things that are what I view as easier, feel more religious than people who are observing the quote unquote traditional Jewish values and rules of what Jewish life is.
I think a lot of this
and I think it's a phenomenon of what you are saying. We're changing the metrics because we have to feel more comfortable in our Jewish life. But are we changing the metrics, or are we just watering them down?
It's not mutually exclusive. I don't think that they're being watered down. I think that more people are finding the healthier metrics and programs to have long sustained religious engagement in their life. I think you are a unique phenomenon, that you are somebody who maybe the Tish was more suitable, but you grew up in a house absolutely surrounded by Navy SEALs. I do not envy your position, but you are surrounded. I know your extended family. You grew up in a house of people who have trained and are successfully. They are the elite Navy SEALs of the world. And you're walking around, even in your own life, still being like, I should probably still be a Navy SEAL.
Because can I just say one thing?
I could have been a Navy SEAL.
I could have been Navy, but you feel that, and that's why when you look at other people who are not Navy SEAls, you feel they never should have been Navy SEAls, but you feel that they shouldn't be doing that. Of course they should be doing that. It's good. Bumper stickers, tishes, ruach. That's what they should have been doing in the first place. It only feels transgressive either because of our institutional marriage, or it feels transgressive, particularly for you.
I don't feel transgressive. I'm very comfortable with who I am.
It feels not you. It feels transgressive.
I'm very comfortable saying I'm less religious.
But your family,
I'm not gonna fill in that empty hole.
They have an
with
example.
Narishkeit and- No, but it actually brings me to the next point, the next part of the conversation, which I wanted to have with you, because a big part of what you do on 1840, I think, and I was catching Laibel up on this yesterday, is you and this is admirable. You view yourself as a service for different parts of the Frum community that are like, let's say, disenfranchised, but also you've been out there in recent episodes, right? You've had episodes where you interviewed an adulterer, for lack of a better term. You've interviewed people who don't believe in the basic tenets of Orthodoxy and everything in between. And it seems like you are trying to find a place for everyone, regardless of what they do and what they stand for in Orthodoxy. And my question is like, then what is Orthodoxy? Like, have we just like destroyed the rules for what it is at that point? If we're trying to make room, if we're trying to make room for the adulterer and the kofar, and I'm trying to think of the other examples you've had on, but I wrote some of them down.
Okay, whatever. We
white collar crime, intermarriage, all these things where the goal, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but the goal it seems to be is let's carve out a space, let's make them feel comfortable. Then what's the point of Frumkeit?
Great question. I'm not trying to carve out a space for more of this.
Do you understand why it feeds on what I was saying before, the conversation we were having
in
before?
In a way. I think I'm trying to help people disentangle Orthodox Judaism in America circa 2023 from
24, by the way.
2024. Thank you for that.
Someone's been hungover
To
since New Year's.
disentangle that institutional orthodoxy from actual Yiddishkeit as practice from the most important institution, which is your home and in your personal life. And I believe that in the same way, in the 18th century, 17th century, you had Rabbanim who were very much addressing all of the topics that you spoke about in very real ways, and publishing it, and talking to people, and giving adulterers a path back into the community. I mean, there's a famous tshuva in the Noda B'Yehuda. I'm not going to get into the details. You can look it up yourself. But
Wait, why can't you get into the details? You know I'm not going to look it up.
Nah, but I think there was an effort that we can still talk and engage, because the goal isn't to have these people. We confuse institutional thinking for familial thinking. You yourself wouldn't say that somebody who's fallen in a terrible way, you have no place in Judaism. They might not have the right place in our institutions. And I think we're continuing the same mistake, which is confusing our institutional thinking for Yiddishkeit itself. Yiddishkeit transcends any institutions, and I use the word Yiddishkeit and not orthodoxy, because orthodoxy is a phenomenon that is, again, it's associated with, there's a basic overlap with what Yiddishkeit is, but Yiddishkeit orthodoxy is a 300-year-old term, 200-year-old term, whatever, 1700s, late 1700s, early 1800s. It's a recent term. There's a Yiddishkeit that was preserved over thousands of years. That's what I'm looking to figure out, and that's the most important thing to preserve. And everybody in their life, no matter what they've been through, has a place in that.
But on an institutional level, you agree that we have.
I'm not an institution in that level. I don't think every school.
I'm trying to fully understand what you're saying. You're saying, according to this question, you're saying that I'm not trying to make a space for them in Orthodoxy.
I'm not trying to make a place in Orthodox institutions. Because I'm addressing people who are no longer institutions. I'm trying to address them in their own lives and within their own families, because they are a part of our families and they are a part of our lives.
So you're effectively saying you want the familial aspect of it
to be recentered almost. I think
kind of like it used to be if a kid went off the Deruch, let's say, in a home. It was like the parents would let him have nothing to do with the family, and now we've moved to a place, the correct place, of where it's like,
that's
where
good.
It's like,
that's healthy.
All right, he chose to do this, and it's okay with other people trying to do different things, and that's like a healthy thing within a home.
Correct.
You're trying to bring that conversation a little further.
Bring in more recentering the family as the most important institution for the preservation of Judaism.
I think it's difficult because in Europe, let's say, there was the institution, the boys went away to learn in yeshiva, and there was the shtetl.
You are so historically ignorant, it's hard to stay calm.
No, my point is,
how many people do you think was what do you think was going on?
You didn't let me finish. Yeah. You didn't let me finish. I agree. Most people were not going to yeshiva.
Like the overwhelming majority.
Yes.
Yeah.
But can I finish what I was actually going to say?
Yeah.
The institutions were there, but they were not nearly as close to the home as they are today. The parlor meetings, the PTA, the involvement of the institution in the home.
This is,
Yeah, so that's what I was saying.
It's a different universe.
So it's much harder to make that distinction you are making nowadays.
I think it's hard. I think people, you need a culture, a religious culture in your home that is thoughtful, that has a little bit more flexibility than institutions have. Institutions can't have flexibility. They need policy. They need rules. They need in, they need out. Who is this for? You need that. It's by definition, institutions need that. Families need a little bit more resilience and flexibility in the way that they think through these things. And I think in some ways, many, not all, have been almost corrupted by institutional thinking. Not that institutional thinking is wrong, but it's wrong when it's misapplied to the family.
Well, that's what we were speaking about in the beginning.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, I guess the question is there any, should we give space? And this is, I do think there's some merit for this. Should we give space in a familial setting for the type of behavior that he's referring to, that you've spoken about, whatever.
In a familial setting, yeah.
I mean, should we be giving like
families need
to be nothing to do with religion?
Yeah,
I would just say across the board. If you're Christian, like,
yeah,
bro,
that's how I
you cheated
feel.
on your wife, get that, like, no, you're out, like, you're done. Like, I'll speak to you one-on-one, maybe like privately, like whatever, like to give you like compassion and everything, but I'm not going to normalize and that's obviously the fear. I think that like when you speak about things to a degree you normalize them. I'm pretty much on your side, like as much as possible.
So I think that concern of normalizing breaks down on must break down on the family level.
I don't know if
institutions normalize, families need a different strategy, and I don't think they could be as concerned with the normalizing. Obviously, families also have their boundaries. But they need to be much different because even if you leave the boundaries of your family, you're still family. You can't uproot that.
But
so our approach to it needs to be different. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to give like specific examples of like, well, I have.
What I'm saying is when you say this needs to be have more flexibility within a family, like regarding an adulterer, right? Someone who cheated on their wife. How would that look? Like, I'm just trying to understand in a familial setting, how would that look? Like, what would you, if they were going to kick the guy out of the family, like, kids should be okay with it? Like, I'm trying to understand.
I don't want to get into the specifics of a specific case. There's so many variables in a family. That's why it's necessarily different. Like, you could have a school that has rules. These are the things that are not allowed. A family can't articulate their rules in the same way and shouldn't be articulated in the same way because it doesn't operate. It doesn't have the same boundaries and structure as an institution. So if somebody were to ask me, so you're saying in a family you shouldn't say, I'm saying, no, I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying the way that you formulate and your response to situations that are challenging needs to be different. You shouldn't be taking out, a family shouldn't be taking out a rule book, like schools have.
But you would agree that there are certain things that should definitely not be familial-based acceptance. If someone murders someone, you would agree, hell no. Like, no, dude.
Wait. I'm interested to hear the response.
What's the answer?
I think that families, by definition, can and should operate by separate rules. If somebody, God forbid, lo aleinu, somebody in the Jewish community murdered somebody, would I tell that parent that they should never visit that child again? I don't think so. I don't know.
But I'm saying as far as the okayness within...
But that's what your whole formulation, like the okayness, the normalizing.
Right, well, you're having a conversation. You're pushing...
Because
like some
the
aspect.
normalizing is different when it's in the context of a family. When you see a mother go visit their child or have a relationship with the child, no matter what they did. I
agree. I'm not referring to that. I'm talking about conversations regarding like the children and what to make... Like give more understanding.
I think it's a fair question. Is there a line? He's asking,
but I'm not just that. I'm asking further, right? Nowadays, if someone's... homosexual, right? A family member's homosexual and they come back into the home for Shabbos. Or there's a random homosexual that comes into the home for a Shabbos meal, right? Let's just say that's the case. The correct way of dealing with it as a parent would be, the way a parent would deal with that nowadays, hopefully would be significantly different than how we dealt with it 20 years ago.
Great.
And I'm asking, what you're saying about what we need to do with the most intense cases, a parent who has
It sounds like you're still asking for the rule book. You're like,
God,
give me the rule book.
No, I'm not asking for a fucking rule book. Listen to me. Okay? Listen to me.
Word.
Your job. Listen to me. I'm asking you, yes, I agree with you. If someone murdered someone, I could understand why a parent would still go and visit the child. I could understand how someone would say to do that.
Okay.
I'm talking about the kids. Like, how are you going to, are you recommending that you give over that exact same idea
to the other
kids?
To a
10-year-old or a 15-year-old or an 18-year-old and make space for that child?
Look, I don't want to give such an extreme example, but let me give
an extreme example.
I'll talk from my own experience.
Okay, go ahead.
My father grew up in a town where most people were not religious. There are like 3 people who are still affiliated with the Orthodox come out of this town. My father has a brother who lives in Bennington, Vermont. His name is Uncle Alan. I love him like crazy. I knew from a very young age that he was not Orthodox. It was much more rare then. It's even more rare now to have an uncle who is not just like not Orthodox, like he didn't leave, he never went to yeshiva, doesn't know anything. It's even more rare now, think generationally. And my parents, especially when you were a young kid, I still remember the first time I saw him eat bread without washing. Right. I noticed, I was like, what's happening there? And my parents were able to take me aside and process it as a family member. And that kind of processing, those conversations are so holy, and I don't think they're happening that much anymore.
Okay, first of all, I think they're happening a lot more nowadays.
Correct.
A lot more in the last 5 years.
5 years,
There's been a
correct.
big push for that.
Correct.
And I'm asking you specifically,
okay,
where does that end?
Where does what end?
There's a line. It's a fair question.
The conversations that your parents had with you to explain how to see life differently.
Let's say putting not washing on bread in here and murder is here. Okay, you want to talk about murder. There's a line where even a familiar relationship should end.
I don't think so.
You don't think
so there's no line that you should explain to your kid, listen, he murdered someone, but we're Tati and Mommy are still, he's still part of our family, even though he murdered someone or whatever. I don't know, did something heinous. I want to know where it ends. It's a very important thing.
I don't think I don't think a parent's responsibility to their child ever ends. And I think that they need to have conversations.
I'm not saying to a child. I'm
saying
talking
to the rest of the
other
family.
Children.
You should come together. Maybe he's not
fundamentally going to change the way that family looks on a structural level.
You have to message to the other kids about what the difference is for sure.
So with an adulterer, you would say that we should message the kids who are, let's say, below an age where they could actually understand and maybe take it to a space of where like it's not that bad and like, or not.
There's too many variables. Do the kids know? How public is it? I mean, there's too many variables in that situation.
Okay. Fine.
There's too many variables.
I do think there's an element for sure that the more again, I'm normally on your side that we should talk about everything and everything's fair game to talk about, because the idea of not talking about what's actually happening is a stupid concept. I've always argued with people that I'm in my peripheral world on this. With that being said, I do think there's an element of truth maybe to it, meaning if you're an adulterer and cheating becomes more normalized because everyone's doing it, that's the easy response of how people start doing things. When something becomes less that everyone's doing it and therefore it's not so bad because you see how they're getting on with their life and it's the cognitive dissonance is something they can live with, I think that's for sure an aspect to why cheating has gotten significantly more rampant. Because everyone knows a friend or two or three that have cheated, and there was a little bit of a ruckus, they went to family therapy, and then they continued. So all of a sudden, when they're seeing a hot chick on the street, it's a lot easier to sit there and be like,
I just won't be able to go to shul anymore.
This
or
is
whatever, it'll be a fight for a year.
You have to change shuls or whatever, yeah.
Or whatever it is, I'll have again, they're not thinking this logically, but when you're scared of doing
Probably
something.
won't even have to change shuls.
Meaning what's the reason why, like, let's say murder, right? People don't murder because the outcome is so severe. They don't go in jail for their life, and they know the ramifications are so severe.
I hope there are other reasons why people don't murder, but sure, that's one of them.
I mean, that's whatever it is, but there's an element to that. So if you would be maligned to a certain degree, if you're someone that's a cheater in your community, I think there could be actually a benefit to someone to that because people would actually be less prevalent to cheat.
Yeah.
And
did we just switch topics?
No, I think he's asking you a fair question. Is that the Orthodox?
I love you deeply with admiration and care, but I don't know why I'm saying a bunch of things and you're like, we're not talking to each other.
I think it's a fair question, meaning you are saying that our sins and our failures, our transgressions should only affect the structure of our participation in the institutional
should
level.
affect our institution differently than family.
But publicly we should talk about it and by talking about it.
Like, that's a different question. That's
because your intention is one thing, but again, you are perceived the same way he's perceived differently than his intention. You are also perceived differently than your intention. So your podcast, let's say that we use the example of adulterers, white collar people who have done terrible white collar crimes. They're not necessarily perceived in that way all the time. It's just because your audience is a lot dumber than you are in general, right? So these like very nuanced distinctions they're not able to make. It just looks like a general greater acceptance of this activity in the community.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, there's
do you disagree with that?
I feel terrible if somebody got that impression. I hope that they listen.
God, but that's the flip side. But that's not a fair response. Meaning, if you're going to say I'm doing something, and odds are that a lot of people will see it one way, and then just be like, 5% of people are smart enough to understand.
And I'm not saying that it's not worth it.
Hold on, Dovi. Hold on a second. And then 5% of people are actually going to understand. Well, I feel terrible that 95% are seeing this as, are taking away from this an okayness and a more comfortability to cheat. But that's terrible. But 5% are getting what I'm saying. that holds a lot of responsibility.
I don't think it was 95%.
No, I think the percentages are off, but I definitely.
I'm just giving an example. It's for the sake of
I
example.
was very careful in the way that I had that. This is a different conversation than the family conversation. I mean, what am I willing to talk about? I'm willing to talk about it if I frame it the right way. I think it's a real issue in the community that has not been discussed in a healthy way, and coupled with somebody's personal experience who represents the community with, again, you didn't mention a world-renowned therapist who I think gave messaging. I listened to that part. I don't know if people. If you turn off in the middle, I
hear you.
I think
I
agree.
that therapist-
I'm not saying. I'm just
like
asking the question.
I'll talk about I'll talk about an issue like that. I think it was very important because so much of what I've tried to do is help people navigate their familial relationships. At the heart of that is the spouse, and I do find that people nowadays do not have the strategies and tools to really navigate what they see in the world and how inundated we are.
I don't disagree with any of that.
Yeah.
Like, that's all great. I was just, again, I'm more diving into the specifics and zooming in. No, this particular thing, I think there are certain things that should have a no tolerance policy.
In the
sure.
family, you're saying?
Well, maybe very small things in the family, like outside of the parents, should have a no tolerance policy.
Oh, that's really what he said.
But I'm saying, I'm talking about as far as even public, even a little bit public conversation. Like, you don't get to continue in our community and get eartime or anything. Like, no, we're not okay, like, with certain things. Like, no. Like, very hard lined. We're not becoming more, this understanding, and we're going to be more progressive, which I love because we were not progressive on anything, let's say 15, 20 years ago. That ends at a certain point, right? That the liberal movement has taken conservatism and swung all the way on the other side. Where you can cut off your penis, and it's like, yeah, we have to understand they're a human being. I'm like, no, you cannot cut off your penis. You're not a part of our society. You could do it, but you're... should go to a mental institution, and we're not going to take you seriously and say that now we should change our bathrooms to being right. There's an angle of where
the conservative. This is nothing to do with the conservative liberal.
That's not the point. I'm giving an example. I'm giving an example of where we've shifted. Where the shift of going too far.
Correct.
There should be things, in my opinion, that are no tolerance policy, and the fact that we have inculcated over the last 5 to 10 years a much more healthy approach across most issues, which are good, such as, let's say, going with kids that are having struggles as teenagers and become not religious or whatever it is, homosexual, any of those issues, I think that needs to end at a certain point. And
even in public conversation, you're saying?
Yes, to a degree, yes. It's
really?
very delicate.
I didn't know that.
We probably have different lines.
No, I thought you
very,
were
very specific things. Very specific things. I just very specific things. Like, I think cases of like cheating and murder and those things, I know I'm bringing intense ones, rape or whatever. I think those are very, very serious discussions that should have a no tolerance policy.
Even in public discussion. I mean, you would not talk about that.
What does that mean? I would talk about it with you. I wouldn't give eartime to someone else.
To a rapist.
Correct. I would not even.
We just
the public conversation I would have about it would be about what exactly is going on.
I don't think you should be talking about those things either, honestly. But
what does that mean?
I think that the messaging that I do when I talk about a controversial subject is very careful, extraordinarily sensitive, and I'm not, even in that episode, it was anonymous, we changed the person's voice, but I wanted to highlight a very real issue that people are grappling with.
I got it, yeah.
And again, I got a lot of...
I feel bad I made it too much about that episode. It's just the general concept, meaning you definitely veer into subjects that people have not veered into before, which I have that was an amazing thing, but there's definitely a cost to that.
There's a huge cost, especially on a personal cost. There are people who are, it's very hard for me. Yeah, there's a real cost.
You?
Furious. Yeah,
for sure. No, I knew that, but I'm saying.
I'm by the way, in 99% of cases, I agree with you. Like, I'm all above board. Like, I am. I think that in certain cases,
I would not do a podcast with a convicted murderer.
Right. Well, why not? Why does it end there?
I don't think murder is a serious issue that our community is grappling with.
But if it was you would.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't think it's a serious issue. I'm not going for like that's cool as a murderer. Like, I look at like what are issues.
Okay, I already saying. No, there's an element to
We've had people in the public place being arrested for these issues. We had people in the newspapers in Vanity Fair. I don't want to give examples. Yeah. I didn't bring this issue to the fore.
No, I understand.
Right. No, I hear what you're
we
saying.
need real messaging in a sensitive, thoughtful way. And I do. And when I said I don't want you talking about this because I don't want you. I didn't have a hawk about it. We weren't hawking about this stuff. It was a very laser focused conversation.
I understand. I totally get you. And by the way, I hear what you're saying 100%.
Yeah.
So for anything I just said, let me just finish one thing. You should also know that even in these scenarios, I'm not saying that I don't, even for, let's say, someone who cheated, right? Or certain scenarios that's like white collar, whatever. Especially someone who cheated. I'm not saying I don't have significant compassion for that person and I don't have significant understanding for that person. In fact, on a one-on-one conversation, I would illustrate those particular attributes significantly. Like I would, because I can only imagine what that person was going through in his marriage, the pain that he's in that got him to that place. With that being said, on a public level, I think that it also has to be conveyed very clearly to this person that what he did is not okay under any circumstances, despite all of his pain and all of his issues. Those two things are not mutually exclusive.
I tried to do that, and that's
exist.
the part that some people felt I didn't do a good enough job on.
That's the difficult. The balance is so delicate.
That's very
By the way,
hard.
let me tell you something. Most people are not smart enough, like he said, to have the nuance and the fine line that you understand, right, regarding that you could talk to a person, have significant empathy and compassion for a molester even, right, because they're a human being at the end of the day, right? They're a sick human being. They have cancer. They have something that they're sick, that the outcome of that is this. But at the same time, they are hurting other human beings, and therefore it is not okay, right? And getting that line is you're the only person who's going to get.
This is the
sensitivities
sensitivities that I occupy my entire life with,
I
and
understand,
it's really challenging. And I've gotten things wrong, or some people thought I got things wrong, but this is a real issue.
I think you to an extent are a victim of your own success, because it is very good at some of these episodes are very good at really empathizing with people who have done, let's say, terrible things, or just like not.
Or just don't fit into the normal standards of the community.
Right.
Yes.
It does run the risk of kind of blurring the institutional line also a little bit.
100%. Yes, I agree with that.
You want to know, by the way, all these things, they all go back, honestly. The thing we're discussing right now, that line and understanding both sides, it all goes, it's so intertwined with so much of what we've spoken about specifically already, as far as, being in high school and then coming out and, falling off that cliff. Most people are just rolling through life. They're not given over the ability to process and think on a deep level, intentionally, analytically, to really go into the depth of life. They don't do that. They just roll. Like
It's the biggest challenge of being alive.
But I'm saying, the yeshiva system also, it doesn't give them that. So you can't tell someone what to do in a yeshiva. You could speak to someone who is doing something in their home, tell them 100 times. The minute the scenario is a little bit different, they have no fucking clue what to do. They're all of a sudden, right? You tell them, listen, when your kid is crying, do this. All of a sudden, the kid, instead of crying, is screaming, and they go do what
Correct.
they do. But that's not. You're not going to be able to fix that. That's an inside thing in a
Exactly.
human being. But that's an art that needs to be taught. It takes a long time.
It can't be taught. It needs to be developed, cultivated, and nurtured.
Yes, but that happens over
a long period of time.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying so much more the focus in the developmental years of a person is the ability to, craft a person's mind to start knowing innately what to do in a situation, because their life is operating around that.
Yes.
But again, to me, it goes back to the person. It's very hard. Meaning, you have to be committed to doing it and committed to learning it. Also, you can't learn what you don't know. You can't know what you don't know. So, there are a lot of people, they wouldn't even know to want to learn that because they don't even have an understanding of what it is. It's like, I think of any example. It's like you can't learn what you don't know exists. It's like
Correct.
you'd be explaining to someone something that they're like,
That's what I
have
think
no idea
needs
what
to-
you're talking about.
We need to explain to people more, what are the tools or strategy that they were missing, not for any malicious reasons, but because maybe you didn't need this when you were in 10th
Honestly,
grade.
you know what in my opinion, the biggest solution for this is therapy, straight up.
That was the first thing I mentioned.
That's the only, because that gets you thinking about how you became.
Correct.
So then,
I'm a huge
you're
proponent of
using
therapy.
your brain to figure out what to do for the next person.
1000%.
You could sit and learn all day from today till tomorrow. Yeah, you have a great ability to teropharmatosis, but you could do a great math example that doesn't translate over to any ability for relational skills to children and dealing with them when you're tired. And they're throwing a tantrum, or your wife is bitching
and
out
it could
on the
sometimes even not only is it not relevant, it can distract, because if you stay so attached to that metric of
it's disaster.
tearing up a tosos, you say, "Oh, I'm doing up there," and all that other stuff is a distraction.
Too, or when your kid is not tearing up those too, the criticism.
Correct.
It's a
Correct.
disaster. Well, these are the disasters that tear apart families, straight up,
Yes.
destroy kids.
Truly.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Should we move on?
Yeah, I mean, guys, if you need parenting advice, you come to me.
Label.
By the way, people don't know this. I have many kids, by the way. I never have told people this.
It's interesting. I would never have.
Why do you think I know so much about this?
I would never. It's not.
fly to
I started to
Africa.
get suspicious.
I
I'm
fly
like,
to Africa
this
a few
guy's got
times
a
a month.
bunch of
It
kids.
doesn't surprise me that you have a lot of kids. It surprises me that you know about that.
Oh my
Speaking
gosh.
of having kids, families, things like that, you have become kind of noted as like a single expert, I guess, in recent
I'm not
years.
a single expert.
definitely spoken on the
I've
topic
thought
of
a lot
bachelorhood.
because I was single for longer about the struggle of why it's so hard for some people to get married, and specifically, I'm very intrigued, and it relates to exactly what we just spoke about, the intersect between our religiosity and our singlehood, and how being single affects people religiously is something I find very interesting and important for us to think about in the community. Do you want me to go through each of you and explain why you're not married?
All right, everybody, want to take a quick break for a second to give a big shout out to our sponsor for this episode, Ice Shaker. For those of you that watched the Chris Gronkowski episode, you know that he retired from the NFL and started a very successful company called Ice Shaker. They have sold over 1 million bottles already. If you're a workout junkie or you just want a bottle that will keep your liquids super frozen, because they last for about 30 hours. They have sold over 1 million bottles. Rob Gronkowski is a partner in this company. They actually were on Shark Tank and got an offer from all 5 sharks. If you have a company and you want to give these out, you can send them their logo. They do a lot of customizable stuff. You can reach them on info@iceshaker.com. You can also call them 817-329-6478. We personally know Chris. He's freaking awesome. Really generous, great guy, and we really thank him significantly for sponsoring us here on the Mislabel podcast. You can reach them again, info@iceshaker.com, or call them 817-329-6478 and follow the prompts to reach their sales department. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoy watching the rest of the episode.
I was about to ask why are we
First of all,
doing that.
Abby,
I was
you
literally
said-
about to ask that.
You
I
said
actually
something and you do this well, and I'm not saying that what you're saying doesn't make total sense.
Yeah.
I'm not that good with understanding these things. Like could you just explain in a little more depth, like clear English for like pretend I'm a 5-year-old, just explaining what you said?
When you are single, you're obviously in your mid-20s, so you're at one of the most, you're totally bereft. You don't have any of the markers of what you should be doing, particularly in your religious life. So there is a lostness that you feel, almost like a wandering. And even if you were doing everything, you feel like you still wouldn't really be getting any credit, because all that you're really trying to do when you're single is hold yourself together enough religiously to just connect to somebody else, and then finally start what my real religious life will ultimately look like. And I think it weighs down on people that they either point to the married Orthodox community and say, oh, you guys need to be much more accepting. I actually don't think there are too many answers there. Or they kind of create, single communities of their own, which I think is very, very beautiful. I wasn't even able to integrate into those. I didn't like those, like a single community. You did something in the middle, which is wild.
Why not? Why not? By the way,
What did I do?
You moved as a single person into a more typically married community.
Oh no, I have nothing to do with this community.
But
I
it's
don't even
interesting.
know-
That's the
But-
point. He's
but
saying
it's interesting.
you did not move to the Upper West Side.
Yeah.
I would never move to the Upper West Side.
Correct.
I go to Gaza
That's-
first.
It's
Like,
it's an
literally.
interesting
But
choice.
that's what I'm pointing out. But the effect it plays on the role that it plays on people religiously, I think, is very, very hard. Where they're still kind of holding on to, as it slowly unravels, their last institutional experience. I'm a yeshiva guy. I went to this seminary, whatever it is. And they try to hold on to it, and it slowly unravels, because that, as I mentioned, that is not going to carry you on for the rest of your life. I think it is actually much, much harder for women than it is for men in the way that it affects them religiously, because a man, as you know, and is probably experiencing your own life, can go off the Deruch in a blaze of glory, having chazer treif and pig and whatever it is, and they're just running amok. But if then you make a little bit of money, you get established, and then you come in the community,
Right.
put on the nice shirt, you could be a dinner honoree within 12 months. It's not that hard. You got
Great title.
12-month pipeline, like you're back, baby.
Fantastic.
Like I'll have your
Well
picture in the TED, like you're good to
Label's
go.
like, as someone who's done it,
You're good to go. I can give you a 6-month plan. You'll get honored by the mirror.
I'm
We
familiar with
get there.
trust me, I am with you on this.
But I think for women, it's not the same. And this is part of why there's much harder for single women to find people religiously compatible. In our community, I'm being descriptive, not prescriptive, meaning I'm not saying how it should run, I'm saying how it does. Sociologically, if a woman goes off
Yep.
for, and all of a sudden the sleeves get a little shorter, they're wearing leggings or whatever the markers are in that community. I don't say that anybody...
Whatever the metrics are.
Whatever the
Deep
metrics.
Love, care and admiration.
Whatever those are, the pipeline back is a lot more tricky because of, I think, gender roles that play in both Jewish and non-Jewish communities. The sense of coming back is not going to be the same. If a woman goes off for 2 or 3 years... The easiest way to come back on is, I don't know, move to a different community, change your name, and start from scratch. Right. It's much, much harder.
I wonder if they could.
They also go off much more aggressively.
But let me finish. But that's part of this. Why? Because of that, they hold it together for much longer because they know if I leave this, it's not going to be that easy coming back in.
In the ninth month, it's over.
It's not going to be that easy to come back in. And somebody knows.
But he's making a good point. It's a much more when they do pop. It's a much more
because they've held it together for so much longer.
Right.
So much pressure when they finally go. It's like Rabboni Shalom. God, I can't do that. I can't hold this anymore. Guys, they have a taiva. They look at somebody. There's that. They go off the Deruch for 2 weeks and then they come back on. They're good to go. Oh, we didn't see you.
You could even go back and forth.
Yeah,
which is
you go back and
Lovely.
Yeah, you could be fine. It's so much easier the entry and exits. And what concerns me is that all of the entries. This comes back a little bit to thank you Hashem. All of the beautiful entry points that we've created, I have found are much more male focused. And I am worried that women who I have no doubt are struggling with very similar issues do not have the messaging and the programming and the ways to come back in and out in the way that really suits the experience of being a single person in the, in the 20s and 30s in the modern world now.
So, no, I hear you. And
so they suffer. So guys, they go down, they go up, they go down. When they have to hold it together so they don't. Where are all the guys my age? They're going off the Deruch right now because they know they can come back on at any moment. Well, that's the answer.
But girls could be a little bit more flexible when in shidduchim specific.
Slowly, they have to lower that flame imperceptibly, like.
No, I don't know if I fully agree 100% with you. I understand what you're saying, and I'm not saying that there's zero validity, but you're making it sound like a guy could go Chazer Trave, come right back on, and he's in. And it's not.
I said a 12-month plan.
But it's not a 12-month plan. It takes more time than that.
16.
Depends how much money you have. Let's be honest.
Okay. But I also think that there's, again, this is going to be a controversial statement probably, but I also think that there is a difference. There is a difference in a guy going off and a girl going off. There is a difference.
What are you talking about?
I'm saying the same
reason. Their purity?
No.
The feminine purity leaves them?
No.
What do you mean?
Well, stop getting defensive.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything about that. What are you talking about?
Finish your statement.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
The same way I think that, again, I'm going to have a lot of people that are going to hate me right now, but the same way I think that a man having a high body count and a woman having a high body count is two different things. That's all. It's the same idea.
You are talking about that.
But nothing to do with impurity. It's not about impurity thing. I think the way a woman is made up and the way a man is made up, it's two different things.
They reprimand fundamentally different things.
Human beings. God created two different things. So if correct, they're just different aspects.
You're not pointing out something that is unique to.
I'm pointing out a sociological difference. You're saying that's rooted in creation itself.
I think your sociological difference is.
A woman being more promiscuous since the beginning of time is worse for a reason. It's not random. It's not misogynistic. A woman's body
maybe
is her
yes,
essence
maybe
and her
no.
beauty.
To me, it doesn't. To me, what I'm saying is it doesn't matter what the reason is. It doesn't matter what the reason is. The experience is very difficult, and I don't think there are enough people paying attention to that. I think everyone's going out, and we've solved the problem. How to be a marginally interested guy. You're 29, you're 33, you're single. You've got enough barbecues and Rosh Hashanah, Tisha, whatever you need, Rosh Chodesh, Tishas, whatever you're getting together. You've got 1,000 options, and I think for women, the options of anything less than the sheer that whole or chesed opportunities, but just socializing chevra together, it's much harder.
In the singles world,
there's a lot there's a lot of wonderful stuff, but not enough in my opinion, specifically for women in our community.
In the community, there is no space right now for a single guy, let's say like me and him, outside of the singles world that exists that we're familiar with.
In a married community,
right?
Yeah.
Well.
What were you saying?
In the frum community, I'm sorry, if I said this wrong. In the frum community right now, the community we're referring to, there is the space for single people.
Yeah.
Girls have access to and guys have access to.
Yeah.
It's one space. It's
But
why do we have more spaces than they do? Why do we have more options in that regard?
I think there's a host of reasons. If you walk into a base medrash, and let's say you put on a white shirt, you could sit down and you are the same as everybody else.
we could get back into it. The entry point is
Yeah, that's
Correct.
exactly what he's saying.
Oh,
The
I thought you
the
were
entry
saying
point
that
is
they
better.
don't. Okay, no, I thought you were saying
The entry back in is so
you're
much.
saying that there's only chesed, right?
It's so much easier. And I think the programming, even while you're single and on this like volatile, guys have a lot more options, I think, than
easier.
girls. I
Definitely-
think
definitely.
communally we have not paid enough attention
Definitely.
to this demographic. We
How-
either have like the really stark still or the ones who are unaffiliated. But the people who were once upon a time stark or once upon a time like really holding the line, and now it's deteriorating a little bit. We haven't figured out messaging for women in our community, and it pains me. I feel very bad. I did not think this would be the center of the mislabeled conversation, but it's something
We
that
love
I think
women
about.
here.
Why would
There
it
are
not
no
be
women.
incentive?
You wouldn't even-
I have tried.
I'm always nervous to tell-
valiantly getting
Yeah.
2 girls who are dope or 3 girls to start a pod under our brand. They just don't show up. I don't know what
Well,
it is.
I think it's the same thing that we're talking about. The risk for a
No.
woman to
But
put themselves
hold on,
out there in our
fairness,
community,
The risk for me is also plenty
but
high.
it's
pretty
it's
damn
not.
high.
It's high. It's not the same. It's not the same. It's not.
Okay.
For a,
It's not the same, but there is a.
it's all about the same thing because you at any point you could fold
I'm not
up
sure
shop.
you're fully. I'm thinking about it. If
You
I
have
want,
much more agency about your place in the community than a woman does. If you held up shop, if you closed down Mislabel tomorrow and you said, I'm doing a full teshuva, you make a couple donations, you dress nicely, we could come up with 12 month to 24 month, we come up with a plan, you're all the way back in.
okay, and
For-
if a girl did this podcast, let's say,
I think the plan would be a lot more challenging to come back in. I think it would be
if
significantly
they
more
held the line
challenging.
that I hold and like have the specifics, I don't know that you're 100%.
Okay.
Right. I mean,
It's an interesting
I think it's a
I
fair
agree
distinction.
overall with what you
Yeah,
said.
that's
Huh?
that's
I don't know.
what I'm saying.
I think he's making a fair distinction. I think the general, there's a big however to me in that like the shidduch crisis, for example. What does that refer to?
I did a series on this. I don't believe there's a shidduch crisis. I
Okay,
think
but you know
there's-
that it's something people talk about.
Yeah.
Actually, it generally refers to single women.
Correct.
So that's an unfairness, I think. To just assume that
Correct.
the experience of a single girl in the
Correct.
frum community is just so much worse than a single guy.
Yes, that
is
I
very
agree
unfair.
with. Well, it's just
And I think it's a result of it's just more talked about because
it makes people sadder.
yes,
I'll
it
tell you
does.
also why.
Because they very often single guys have things like this.
No, but no.
you-
I'll tell you a better reason why. It's much more. The reason why it's much more dangerous for women specifically because as they get older, unfortunately, their looks get worse. They're unfortunately. I'm sorry for saying
Disagree.
this.
I love
Their value goes down. It's just the mitzvah. When a woman is 30, any guy that's 30 like myself could just go and date a 25-year-old. So there's a much more
There is
dangerous
that's a
situation
real
that goes
imbalance.
on
It's
when
a real
girl
thing.
gets older. It's much
That's
more
a real
scary
thing.
if
I
you're a girl and you
understand
keep getting older.
the day-to-day
you're watching
experience.
Your
I think the
Scary.
The day-to-day experience and sadness is a strong word. The struggle of being single in a frum community and not having a family and all these things is very similar for guys and girls. And the guys do not get a lot of airtime for that.
It's very similar to again, as I said, I think guys it's much easier for them to re-engage on equal footing than
You're
for,
making a very specific point about religious life and not the
No, even socially, for a guy to hang out with their married guy friends is much easier to connect with them socially than for a single woman to connect with her married friends who are, whether they're raising a family, career, all that stuff. It is more challenging socially in our community because of how, again, gender roles, a lot of things. I'm talking, again, prescriptively. I don't want to upset
you think
anybody.
it's harder for a single girl to connect with her friends?
Her married friends.
I
A
didn't.
guy
I,
for his married friends?
Why
Yes.
is that?
No, I don't agree with that at all. There's no basis for
Well,
that.
if that's true,
I know many
why
girls that, I don't
why
see
is that true?
I don't see that.
I think that the role that when you start raising a family, even your time constraints, they become extraordinarily limited.
Okay, I hear that.
And as opposed to, again, talking just typical gender roles, becoming a dad is less of a identity transformation than becoming a mother. And therefore, a lot of guys, inside of every guy is still that single guy who is there. You could awake it. You could
Ready to roll, yeah.
You,
But I
you-
know
you
many
could chill and you're
girls-
ready to roll. And I think mothers, and I think it's not a good thing. I think mothers should be able to access that like fun, spirited part of themselves when they parenthood should not be a prison. But I do think for a lot of people it is more challenging. I would think we could run a poll, and
That's
I'm
very interesting 'cause
not
I
going to
actually
die
think-
on this
I actually
hill,
think it's
but
the
I
opposite. I actually think it's quite the opposite.
think you're wrong, but that's okay.
Okay, well, let me explain to you why. I think a lot of times girls the women are in the house with the kids. And a lot of times, I know a lot of girls will go over to their married friends and go help out, go play, be with the kids, this, that. It happens a lot of times. I have 2 friends that I can think of right now.
Even hearing that makes me uncomfortable. Like, because that's not the friend. Like that's like I'll be your chesed. Like
Chesed, no, they're close friends.
No,
they go over to the house.
Friendship is about being part of your life.
Yeah,
this is what my life is up to right now. If you were going to be my friend and be part of my life is my kids
I
right
have
now.
2 friends. Thank God. I'm blessed.
I hope I'm wrong.
Friends.
I'd love to be wrong.
I have like 8 to 10 friends that I'm super close with.
yeah.
The amount of times I'm able to come over that they tell me that like, all right, now it's good. Most of them are literally like, yeah, no, my wife is just, she's overwhelmed right now. You know, this kid has this kid has, I'm not even kidding. I probably get to hang out with them. Every 3 to 4 months, we end up spending a few hours together, like straight up. That's
Yeah.
actually
I would
what it
love
is.
to be wrong on this.
That point
But I
that
don't
you made,
think
I
I
think is a terrible premise, because the friendship is about 2
Being
people,
a part in people's
lives. If this is what my life is up to now, then that is not a chesed.
I fully.
If you're going to be friends with your married friends,
I thought he was describing something else, so you could let that go. I thought he was describing like somebody who like comes up and like helps them cook on Shabbos.
Oh,
and
they chill
like
with
that.
them. Like, I don't know, whatever it
Okay,
is.
maybe
just
I'm
vibe.
wrong. I would love to be.
I
But
love when my friend,
I think it's
when
more
my
challenging.
husband, when my friends' wives, let's say, leave.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll go over. They'll be like, "It's great. Come over tonight because whatever, she's not around tonight. I have to watch the kids. Come over. Let's go watch the game, for example." That's what they're doing.
Guys.
Yeah, that's what the guys will do.
Yeah, guys is
But that happens just as often as the guy's not around, and she's telling her friends to come over because
My
help me
premise
let's
is
do
that
this.
it is not. That's my
Maybe.
premise.
It's a very hard thing
You
to do.
call in now. We send that a poll.
Okay.
I'm sure there will be many polls after this episode airs about this.
Yeah, 100%. 1 second. There was one. We were in the middle of talking about one other thing. I was actually curious. You were talking about the singles world. Okay, maybe I don't remember if we discussed it perfectly. We were talking.
So what is wrong with us? Give it to us.
Oh, the single. Oh yeah, we're single. No, let's go.
let's go.
Why? Oh, I probably for sure have a totally different opinion on you, than you about why people are single, older and single. But yeah, go on. Start with us, for example.
Dovi, I love.
I mean, you know me much better, so you can start with me.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
Dovi's absolutely wonderful. I think he's
Deep love and admiration.
No,
You're kind of the Stephen A. Smith of Jewish podcasting. Before you absolutely obliterate and rip on someone, like, I want you to know, me and LeBron, our kids bathe together. We are best friends. Like, you have adopted the full Stephen A. Smith role of like,
I do that.
I go back, his brother-in-law he's my rabbi, but having said all that, yes.
We've spoken in on. I think
spoken
for a lot of people it's very hard. I think you might be in that category of being uncertain about your own station and what your own station in the community and in life and your own career path and who you are to really engage and have the vulnerability to be in a relationship. I think a lot of the angst of
I strongly disagree, just for the record. Get that on camera.
Yeah.
But I get that a lot. I think
Say that again. Say it one more time. No, I'm just.
No, I get this a lot. It's that that I either am going through a stage that isn't representative of who I am, and I think the uncomfortable.
No, I think it might actually be representative, but figuring out and having the confidence to say, this is me, this is who I am, and that openness to really bring somebody into your life, given where you are right now, is scary. I remember when I got married.
He'll be good in about a year with Miss Laibel.
What?
He'll be good.
No, I'll get a chance to respond and push back after this.
When I got married, I remember one of the hard things about being in the community was like the first question people ask around the table is like, what do you do? Like, what do you do? What do you do?
Right.
And I remember I didn't like the answer that I didn't have like a cool job. I was
I'm
like
a comedian. After I tell people what I do, they're like, no, I mean professionally.
Yeah.
That's usually what they tell me.
And but I think a lot of that like angst that can play a role in just your own sense of self and who you are and where you want to be can play a role in having the confidence and the vulnerability, because I think they go hand in hand, to have like a very real, meaningful relationship with somebody and include them in your life.
I understand what you're
It's
saying.
about not being established with a sexy enough like job.
Are you saying I'm
or,
not
like,
sexy
career.
enough?
No, I'm saying job.
I would
not
use the
looks.
word like the stability of knowing what's the path you're going to be on. And I think stability.
The confidence. Yeah.
The confidence to not be an investment banker in our community. I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think for that's every single person, and it's a different thing in each
Yeah.
single person.
I think a lot of people
I
struggle
think
with
the
this.
first point you were making about having the confidence to be in a certain place is
I think it's increased dramatically over the last year
I think
or so.
the people
His confidence.
the people necessarily around me in my particular situation, and I think this applies to a lot of people. We don't have to talk about me. I'm happy to. But sometimes the people around you, either in your community or your family, are not ready, are the ones that are uncomfortable for that. And because of that, when you come from a high profile family, everyone else is like kind of not
No, I still think that it comes back to the point. I dismiss that. I think you overthink your.
I can't tell you how many people come up. I can't tell you because they don't come up to me, but like come up to my mom and are like, as if like she's sitting shiv on me because like I'm on a podcast, I'm a comedian. Like like how are you dealing with all this Dovi thing? And she's like, great, we love it. Like, she has a funny line.
Yeah,
she
no,
says,
I have full.
She says nachas comes in a lot of different flavors.
Love it.
Oh, I like that line. I like that line.
I think that is a perception that I'll never fully be able to.
But that's you. That's in your head.
No, that's not me. That's other people.
But I think a lot of that
Saying it rubs off on you.
I think a lot of it does rub off on you.
As much as you try not to.
I think
as you become successful, it'll be less and less.
It's getting better and better and stronger and stronger. But I think there were periods where a lot of that, like,
oh, of course, it's an evolution. But I think at this point in my life, it is much more other people than it is myself. You
also probably have ADD that I think affects people's ability to engage.
You think I have ADD? I never get that.
I think so. Oh, yeah.
Is ADD about, and therefore what? Affects people?
I think ADD affects your ability to engage in relationships. It's very hard. Relationships require a lot of patience and focus. And that could, I think ADD can affect people's ability.
No, I fully disagree with that one.
Great.
But
okay, on to me. I want to hear about me. Let's go. Give it to me.
The vibe I got when I first listened to you, Lorne Michaels.
I'm so excited for this right now. I just have to tell you. Go ahead.
Lorne Michaels has a really profound interview with Jerry Seinfeld in his Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, where one of the questions, I quote from this interview constantly because it's so brilliant. One of the questions Jerry asks him is, how did you know that Jimmy Fallon would be a good host of The Tonight Show? He was like a talented cast member at SNL. To host The Tonight Show, he had an okay movie career. He has that one movie with Drew Barrymore, Boston Fever, whatever it's called. How'd you know he'd be good? And he said he creates a lot of space. He creates a lot of space for his guests. He creates a lot of space for them. And I think part of the reason why I was so hesitant to come on, and this is my own thing, is that you have a very overwhelming way of engaging. It's very intense. And I can almost hear the echoes of almost like an arrogant Rebbe you once had, who like your cadence and the way that you respond and hear people, you're not talking in Torah in the way that Rebbe's voice, but I can almost hear the Rebbe equivalent in you that you may have once experienced still animating through you when you're talking about all these other subjects. And I think, Rebbe? I don't know who it is, I don't know if it exists, but I think because of that, sometimes when you engage in conversation, to create the space for real sincerity, and which is a term that I have no doubt you possess in spades, but sincerity, and not like polemics, not an adversarial, but that real sincerity of opening up your heart and who you are to somebody to let, and all the vulnerability that comes with it, is more challenging, because I think that you were probably surrounded, the cadence, the cadence is like the tone and the way you speak through arguments, the way you respond to arguments, because sometimes it'd be so overwhelming, it doesn't leave space for the person engaging with you. Or they could end up shriveling up and like moving back.
So 2 questions.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, have you experienced that on this part or no?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. There was like one or two times.
I thought there was.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there wasn't. I was just curious.
But I see you when I met you. I know it's not malicious.
My other question to you is, which pod did you listen to?
Which one did I listen to? I think I've only listened to the clips, like the clips on Instagram, which are riveting.
Okay, well that's
yeah, no, it's not fair.
You're making an assessment of that.
I am. It's not fair.
That's
It's super weak.
Response.
It's super weak. Exactly what my assessment. Assessment predicted you would respond. I'm joking. No, that's joking. That was kibitzing. We still kibitzing.
Yeah.
I think a lot, for some reason, I'm coming back to the Das Torah stuff. I think what I first caught my attention when you were talking to Das Torah on that, when you were talking about how you understand how halacha works, and I actually like, I heard that like inner intensity and like very like neat.
You're talking about the Flappers Girl episode.
Yeah.
So that's why you're.
And
that's why he thinks that.
Yeah.
But you haven't listened to one other thing, correct?
No, I'm sure I've seen some
have you
clips.
listened to other than that? You haven't really paid attention, because I know, because that was obviously.
Yeah, but that you have that mode. It's like this, like
I hate bullshit.
Yeah.
I absolutely.
But
I don't
it's the
stand for
most
it
misunderstood
even a
understood
second.
episode of Mislabeled, the Flatbush Girl episode. You understand that? Like I watched that also, and that was like I said, I say often on this podcast. A lot of people told me not to come on this podcast. Most of them,
Greatest.
and that's the
compliment of all time.
only episode they watched. And when they explained it to me, I realized they,
I know
they totally
the backstory and
misunderstood
all
it.
that. I don't want
It has nothing to do with like
Maybe my
a
assessment's totally wrong. I'm just giving
No,
you my
I'm
assessment.
not even saying you're wrong. I have no idea.
I could be
just wanted to know.
totally
I
left.
think my question was a good question. No.
That's what it sounds to me like. I'm sure that part of the challenge, again, you could find somebody who loves it and you just like jive together. It's probably harder to discover the vulnerability and the sincerity that is necessary for long-lasting relationships when you have a cadence of discourse that can be very overwhelming for people.
Right. All right. All the girls who I've dated, please. I want messages and calls letting me know if this.
No,
was a
I think
problem
it's
in
an
my
interesting
relationship.
take
Thank you.
because
I say that with deep love and admiration.
I know it's an interesting
What
take
else? Is there
because
anything else?
girls are generally more attracted to on an evolutionary level. Girls are attracted to enigmatic. I don't know if that's the word.
When
Not
I'm
when it's
talking
too
about
direct- not when it's
attraction,
too direct to
and I'm not
them.
talking about attraction. None of this is about attraction. Attraction.
You're talking as a gavra that's like too overwhelming and intense personality.
But I'm talking about somebody who wants to
about
build their
relationally, I would think.
exactly
He's
build
talking
their
about
life with
relationally.
someone. It's a different thing. It's a different thing. To me, like the entry point for relationships is like real vulnerability where you see somebody as like they're like in their true humanity, not for their looks, not for their sexuality. You need all that stuff. I'm big. You got to be attracted to your spouse, but like see the person in that very real way with all their brokenness, with all their talents, with all their skills. That requires like a very specific type of vulnerability and sincerity and a space for that to emerge. And it's
so why were you single for so long?
I suffered from that a lot also. I suffered from this also. I don't have the same cadence as him, but I can be an overwhelming personality. I can be a personality who I think, and I'm usually...
To be clear, I don't think I suffer from it.
Okay.
That's your opinion.
But,
I'm saying.
yeah.
Just to clarify.
No, I had to clear that also.
I agree that I have.
I also don't think that ADHD prevents me from engaging in relationships. I've had a lot of great, meaningful relationships.
No, meaning
just
I
off
will
the
say
record.
this. I think that I definitely have suffered from it.
Yeah.
But nowadays,
It's something else.
I don't think so. Again,
Okay.
I'd love to hear from other people if they felt.
I think
that
for
was the
me,
case,
what hurt me...
I think that's a segment we should do. Everyone should, the next boys pod,
everyone
we
should
will
say,
respond
why
to
do
it.
you have trouble getting married?
Why do they think me and Laibel are single? Like everyone should.
That's great.
And we should
That's great.
we should go through that.
Should be the closing
down.
questions of everyone. I think for me, what prevented me from getting married was how good I was at dating. I'm a very...
That is the most arrogant
Arrogant
take
statement in the history
I've
of the
ever
world.
made.
I'm a very good... I'm a good...
My failures are just because I am too good at the
No.
process. What?
Let me explain. I'm a very good conversationalist. I could schmooze with anybody. I think it's easier for awkward people to get married because the first person they're able to like carry a conversation with and like, oh, like we should like I never had this with anybody. Oh, this is great. Okay, let's get married.
Do you see that in your
I could
friends
build
that are
a-
awkward and married? It's like this was just the first one that.
For some people, it was earlier. The signs were much more obvious, and I think for me, it was hard. I could get along with a lot of people. I could resonate. I like the chase a lot more, like the dating chase, like the whole thing. And I don't like the actual like obligations and
Like, once you get
responsibility of
there.
relationship. So I'm good at dating. I'm good at the chase. I'm good at the flirting and all that. I was excellent at all that stuff. And then once I got
If you
there,
say so yourself, yeah.
no, but you know what it is.
He feels that that's his score.
It's not such a chashuv thing to be good. I was good at planning dates. I was good at flirting, about
could roll,
talking,
you could
the
choose
good,
this, that, comfortable.
all that stuff, texting,
And the
email.
Stoltz in one word. Okay.
Back then, you would even do like emails. I had long email chains with, and I wasn't able.
Jesus Christ.
You remember that? There
You
was a
emailed
time.
girls you dated? No.
I had a long email chains.
Oh my god.
hell?
Was that mean you were going to like the Near Eastern library to like email
No.
a girl you were dating?
No, it was like I'm trying to think. What were there smartphones then? I don't
my God,
fully
David.
remember.
This is. I can only imagine waiting for an email response, or refreshing send and receive on the dot of my email. Is she responding now or like when is this coming in?
I just missed that. Yeah, and I think that made actual being in the state of relationship much harder. It was a vulnerability I wasn't ready for, and I thought my expectations, which would grow the longer you date for, you're like, oh, this. I wonder who you're going to end up with. Your expectations keep on rising. Also made it harder. That I was afraid to bring home just like a regular person, like not. I was still chasing a little bit of that wow, which was just being stuck on the chase itself, and not like being in a relationship with somebody, being in.
Were you looking for that moment, like because it was like built up culturally?
To a degree, but I realized I just had. It took me a long time to get comfortable with the idea of marriage itself. Get comfortable with the idea of relationship itself. It took a while. I dated my wife for a very long time, and I realized a lot of my angst and anxiety was just getting comfortable with that concept itself. I think there's a lot of pressure and rush. Again, this metrics, X amount of dates, drop shotgun, X amount of dates, you should know by now. I think a lot of people suffer from that, and sometimes there's truth to it. I think a lot of people, the pressure of what that track should be ends up sabotaging relationships before they could even emerge.
Okay.
All right. Anything else that we want to touch on?
I want to go through them Dovid Bashevkin mean tweets.
Yes.
So for those who don't know, Dovid obviously has a big presence on Twitter. And there is one guy whose primary objective on Twitter is to troll him. Hilarious guy named Awkward Bacher.
Awkward Bacher.
He goes by.
He's a wonderful person, happens to be.
Oh, you know him personally?
Perhaps. He's one of the most creative people I know, and he's genuinely hilarious.
So these are some of my favorites.
But he's terribly mean to me.
He's very
hurtful.
But it's to all of our delight. David Bashevkin is the type of guy that does Shnai Mikra Ve'echad by Lord Jonathan Sachs.
There's something we have to discuss. Go on. There's something else that has to be discussed.
I was into that one. Replied to so there was a concert with Harry Styles, and he thanked his Orthodox fans for walking his
Orthodox
concert.
family, yeah.
And he responded to that tweet. He replied to that. What did he say? Oh, waiting for Dovid Bashevkin to say this was a Kiddush Hashem so I could drive to Teaneck and knock him out. Bashevkin is the type to have a framed mirror next to the Gedolim pics in his sukkah with some cheesy caption about believing in yourself. That's a very true one.
That's his best one. That's his best one.
I resonate with that one
good.
a lot. Do you have such a mirror in your?
No, I don't have such a mirror.
But you would.
I wouldn't, but I love that imagery. I do.
What?
I wouldn't. I don't put up Gedolim pictures all that much. So.
Why not?
Because it's just trauma.
No, it's just not my
Trauma.
Yeah, totally.
I'm not. I don't have Gedolim or Das Torah trauma. I don't even think about it. Like it's not part of my universe.
Dovid Bashevkin is the type of guy to sell heart warmers on his merch site. I like that one a lot because everything's with deep love and admiration.
No, I just saw. It's probably too long. Honestly, this pod is going on how long right now? 2.5 hours?
Too long, yeah.
Yeah, we're going. All right, fine. I was going to ask you about the whole Chabad situation that happened.
Skip it. Do it with somebody else. Yeah.
Why?
Because I'm not a Chabad guy, and I'm gonna get too.
I saw your.
I'm gonna get too
tweet
sincere.
that
Yeah.
I was like.
I'm gonna get too sincere about it. Yeah.
I want to talk about.
Enough. We fought enough for this one. This was.
Yeah, I want to talk about Jimmy Kimmel and Aaron Rodgers, but we could do it.
Well, yeah, there's too much. This one.
Yeah.
It's a great pod. I enjoyed very much.
Is this how it ends?
Yeah. Well, yeah. How do your pods normally end?
We do like rapid fire questions. At
Oh,
the
so
end.
go. I'm down. Let's go.
No, we would ask him things.
You would
do
ask
we have
me.
rapid fire questions?
We
for
don't
him?
do rapid fire. Can you ask us your rapid fire questions? Could we just flip the script a little bit?
Sure.
Okay.
What's your favorite book? Each of you.
Ooh, that's a great question.
I
In
honestly,
what space?
You give me any. You give me more than one if you have more than
I
one.
wouldn't say this is my favorite book because I read it relatively recently, but I think in religious world, it's one of my favorite books. The one by Shlomo Meiselman,
Oh, sure.
The Soloveitchik Family Heritage.
Yeah.
I think it was like one of the first honest.
Out of print. It's hard to find.
It is one. I have two copies.
It's very honest about growing up.
One of
in
the
house
first
of a
honest
That's great.
Gedolim biographies I ever read.
label.
For business, the book is right there. Steven Schwartzman's greatest book I've ever read. It's in my opinion, a must read.
Cool. I've never read that.
If you're someone who's wildly ambitious, it's a must read.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would say I'm a very, very big fan of the book The Power of Empathy. People haven't been very. It's Arthur Sierra Macaulay. I believe that's his name.
That's great. I've never heard of it.
It's
I'll read
fantastic. You get sold out. It's very hard to get you can buy it used, I think, maybe.
If somebody gave you a great deal of money and allowed you to go back, take a sabbatical, and go back to school for as long as you needed to study for a PhD, what do you think the title of your thesis would be?
Oh, you go first. I don't know.
Title of my thesis. Well,
Broadly
first of all,
speaking, what would you want to study?
this changes as. I would want to study psychology for sure. That's
Okay.
goes without saying. The title of my thesis is kind of change. Like at this moment, it changes. I feel like over time because you're interested in different things
Sure.
at different points of your life. I have to think about it honestly.
Okay, that's
I
fair.
don't have something off the top.
I
of my
would.
head.
I think there's so many
that's-
things I would want. Also, most of them would have to do with the brain. Something that's been piquing my interest. I wouldn't say as of late, but comes back to dating. I would want to study the female brain, and it's why girls seem to be attracted to all the wrong things.
Interesting.
Like,
that is kind of interesting.
I think there's in any circle of datings I've encountered across the religious spectrum, what I have found, unfortunately, is that it's the jerk theory that nice guys finish last. And
people want there's a
direct
truth to that.
There's a direct
100%.
inverse.
That's interesting.
There's a direct inverse correlation with how menschlich and nicely you and interested you are into a girl and her interest in you.
Last question.
I would want to
I'm always curious about people's sleep schedules. What time do you go to sleep at night, and what time do you wake up in the morning?
Great question, actually.
I don't think it's ever been the same 2 days.
My problem that I have with sleep schedules, that's arguably one of the biggest challenges of my life. Like, I'm obsessed with wanting to go to sleep by 11:30, 12.
Oh yeah, okay.
Because I know that that's the way to get the most out of your day.
Yeah.
Like, if you go to sleep at 11:30, you wake up 6 a.m., you're ready to roll. If you go to sleep at 2:30 a.m., which I have a hard time falling asleep, so my brain runs too long and too quickly for
What time
hours.
do you go to sleep at night? What time do you wake up in the
Well,
morning?
I try to get into bed at 12:30, but there's many times where
What time do you
I
wake
just won't
up?
It depends if I have the gym or not.
Okay.
But typically,
You look great, by the way.
I wake up later. I'm not an early riser. I would say on the average day, 8:30, 8:45.
Okay.
Yeah, probably something like that. Today I was exhausted because I didn't fall asleep till 3 a.m. I knew we had this
Gotcha.
podcast. I'm like, I'm sleeping. I woke up probably at 9.
Dovey?
My sleep has always been. I have a terrible time falling asleep because I'm a prisoner of my mind. That's when my brain starts running amok. So I cannot fall asleep without background noise, without TV.
Okay.
Or
my mom does that. She listens to
Shabbos
like
is very difficult
radio
for me.
static.
Like sometimes I'll even leave a radio on.
Okay.
So, and that's like, there's different phases, right? Because like there's like a sweet spot of what you watch, right?
Okay.
Like Curb.
Sure.
Curb is a little too
I
stimulating.
like watching things I've already seen.
watched. So Friends, Seinfeld, The Office.
Hit me the classics.
Right. It's the perfect balance of stimulation to distract you without too stimulating that you stay up.
I'm totally with you on this.
So I don't think I ever know when I actually fall asleep now because I'm in an industry which primarily happens at night.
Okay.
So
You
like
go see much later.
Right. I could get back from a show at 11 p.m. and like that's when I'm starting my night. So my whole day has like kind of shifted. So like,
And what time are you waking up?
Right. It's not weird for me to sleep from 3 or 4 to 10.
Not weird. Okay.
Not weird at all.
Friends, was this not a lot of deep love today?
Dovid Bashevkin, thank you for your deep love, care, admiration, loyalty, and amazingness. I appreciate it greatly. Truly, I'm really happy I met you. I really enjoy this conversation.
I really appreciate it. This was absolutely wonderful. Truly.
So thank you so much for coming on. Really. All right, guys. Peace and love.
Thank you,
On to the
friend.
next episode.